All systems nominal.
それでは早速全速前進
You wanna know what the weak point of a mech is? The fucking pilot.
Get away from her, you bitch!
His papers say he was a raven.
Protocol 3.
A pattern blue!
Welcome to On the Shoulders of Giants, a giant robot power hour discussing mechs across media, their stories, and why we love them. I'm Nico, and I'm joined by Alice.
That butterfly over there better not be my dead sister.
And Brian.
I don't have a bit. I'm going to need you, if you're listening right now, to press pause and go read this book real quick. I'm not joking. I'm not fucking around. Go buy it and do it.
This is a threat. This is an actionable threat issued by the OSG pod. Concur. Agree. This time around, we're discussing part 1 of Iron Widow, a book that reminds us, when you set out on a journey of revenge, dig a shitload of graves because you're killing way more than 2 people. Let's launch into it.
Having fun isn't hard when you've got a library card. Having fun isn't hard when you've got a library card.
Oh, so...
They deserve it.
Yeah, I think the OSG pod stance on revenge is it's cool if you do it right and have fun and be yourself.
It's cool if you fully commit to the bit.
You gotta fully commit to the bit,
commit to the bit.
You're going to feel doubt on your journey of revenge. You're going to say, is revenge actually good? Like, is this the right thing to create more suffering? And the answer is yes, they deserve it.
It always is. You see the dial that says geopolitical politics?
Crank that shit.
I'm going to need you to turn that all the way up.
The answer is yes, open bracket, all men, closed bracket.
And yes, all men, even the scholarly types.
Okay, Iron Widow was written in 2021 by Shirin J. Zhao. It is about 400 pages or about 13 hours as an audiobook, which is broken into 4 sections. So for this part, we read to the end of part 2, which is a little over halfway through the book, but I think it's a pretty good division point. We were talking before record, things after this point go absolutely batshit. So not that the first part of this book was normal.
It was really on rails through part 1 and 2.
So this book is the first in a series, with book 2, Heavenly Tyrant, set to release as of recording on April 30th this year. That is subject to some change. I think there's been some stuff with the publisher, but, keep an eye out. It is coming very soon. So what did y'all know about Iron Widow before reading it? Alice.
I knew it was a book, so I want to get that right out of the way.
Huge ups. Yep.
Knew this was a book. Knew this had, this was popular in certain circles that I sometimes cross over, but I'm not really into...
People who read.
I'm not really into the 3 Kingdoms, so didn't really look out for this. And then the last thing I know is this was in the teen section of my library. So that's all I knew beforehand.
All right, Bri?
That's insane that it was in the teen section, honestly. I feel like this is...
Right here.
I know, mine is marked YA.
YA.
We be showing the kids the stuff these days, I guess.
Dead people and overt murder. Teen.
I think teens need to get more into it. Into murder. Yeah, I had heard zeitgeist detritus about it, and then it was this is one of the few things on our schedule that has been on the schedule since day 1 of conceiving the podcast, so definitely at least that long. We not only have we always basically wanted to cover this, we've always basically planned to release it nowish because the sequel's coming out. Yeah, this has been something I definitely have been really looking forward to as the dedicated brings books to the podcast person.
This was the threat that came with the podcast of, if we're going to do this, we're going to cover books because I want to cover Iron Widow, to which I said, I'm willing to read a book if you think it's good enough, Nico.
And it was. Spoilers, it is, and it was.
2 parts so far.
Spoilers, this book is fucking good.
I cannot remember the last time I was this unable to put down a book.
It was a quick read. It was a very quick read.
You're in it. And they write fast. Sharon writes really fast.
Yeah.
It's good action and stuff like that.
It's a bit up at the top like my one thing I would say is just that it is a little bit breathless. There are a couple moments where I was like, oh, we're already doing it's not there's not a lot in here that's like so like plotty plot, like that's like so like, oh, I didn't see that coming. So it's like, oh, we're already doing this. I kind of wish that last thing had a second to breathe, but like,
yeah, I will say I do have some fun facts. So one of the fun facts, Canny listeners may know once I start naming names, this is based on the reign of China's real first female empress. It's inspired by that history. So some historical ideas and figures are kind of lifted or referenced, but there's mechs in this. So it's really wild.
There's chrysalises. Thank you.
There's chrysalises in this.
Chrysalises.
So that's interesting to know. If you know anything about Wu Zetian, like, you will get a lot out of this book. And if you don't, you will still enjoy this book a lot.
Sorry. I was going to say, I just didn't know. I knew approximately fuck all about any of like the historical context.
I had seen the puppet history episode from Watch for Entertainment.
Oh my god, that's amazing. Actually, no, I was just gonna say like
you're the one who likes books. What the fuck? Read a history book. Jesus Christ.
That's nothing.
I've been annihilated on the pod.
No, that was nothing. I was going to say, finding out, like, the historical context and, like, the actual story has actually only increased my, like, retrospective delight with this book, so...
Mm-hmm. The other fun fact I wanted to say about, maybe the breathless quality of the book, so Sharon's publisher wanted this under 100,000 words. And there's a very funny, I believe it was a Twitter post or something, it was from the Google Docs comments revisions on the draft. And some text that Sharon sent when they finally got it under 100,000 words. It was at like 99,215 words.
Yeah.
And they were like, this looks like a damn price sticker, but I did it. And I think about that a lot when I think about like, ooh, I wish this had a little more time to breathe. I really wish this had a little more. It's like, I think it probably did, but this is kind of the publishing landscape we're in. So hopefully with the success of this book, Heavenly Tyrant has just let them go ape shit. Just let Sharon go ape shit.
That is the official OSG stance is let Sharon J. Zhao go ape shit, please.
Absolutely ape shit. That is release the Girons of War. That's what I always say.
Yeah, we as OSG follow them on like TikTok and stuff. And they are like very like politically active and outspoken, and so like they care a lot about having like these themes be in their books, and you can tell.
Mm-hmm. They're just an overall good follow too. They make a lot of great videos, and their YouTube channel they do a lot of stuff on Chinese history. So,
oh really? Oh fuck.
Yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and jump into the synopsis as
what
a reminder.
What did you know about Iron Widow?
Oh yeah.
It?
Sorry. So I, like many others, had like heard of this book, and I kind of had it on my TBR pile in the sense that like I had marked it as want to read on Goodreads, but I hadn't like actively tracked it down until I got really into the Libby app, which sounds like something
I got really into the Libby app,
which if you don't know is the app that you can use to check out digital materials from your library.
I like that you explained that, but not what TBR is.
To be read.
Like, I can use context clues, but...
Real readers know, Alice. I'm sorry you don't know the lingo,
You just threw out a lot of nerd terms there. The only one you explained was...
No, so yeah, I was going through the list of things that they had at my library that were available to read now. Specifically audiobooks. I love to listen to audiobooks while I do other shit, whether it's play kind of a repetitive game or, someday when the Ashmar model kit arrives, I may listen to an audiobook. Someday in the distant future. But yeah, so I chew through a lot of audiobooks, and I was like, oh shit, they have Iron Widow like ready to go. And so I just downloaded it, and it blew my tits clean off. And that, again, it's been a threat from the beginning. I'm like, we have to cover this on the pod, because I immediately was
right.
like...
Is that why you got your top surgery?
Yeah.
Your tits
And then I had to have them put back on because I actually didn't want top surgery, but you know what? It was all worth it for the book.
The Gatling gun top surgery?
Oh, yeah, that's true. My heavy arms top surgery. Never mind.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I am going to jump into the synopsis. As a reminder, this episode will spoil the shit out of the first half of this book. So that's parts 1 and 2. If you want to go in with no knowledge, pick it up from your local bookshop or check it out from your library before continuing. Get the Libby app, maybe.
Read the fucking book. It's so fucking good.
It's really good. All right.
Actually, if you want to pause this and go and read the book and then unpause this, we'll wait.
Again, this is your second warning.
Well, we'll sit here for 13 hours while you read it, actually.
Yeah, just wait.
Okay, welcome back. I hope it was a good read. We're just going to go over parts 1 and 2. You really didn't need to read the whole thing, but yeah, give us a synopsis, Mika.
Okay. In part 1 of Iron Widow, we're introduced to the nation of Wuxia, which is regularly attacked by bug-like alien monsters called Huanduans. Under the direction of the mysterious gods of the Heavenly Council that rules over it, Wuxia has recovered from a cataclysmic historical attack and learned to harvest the bodies of defeated Huanduans to create giant fighting mechs called chrysalises. Chrysalises are piloted by young men with high levels of spirit pressure who can channel chi for attacks. They rely on concubines, secondary female pilots, to supply them with additional chi at the cost of their lives. Our protagonist, Wu Ziqian, enlists as a concubine to avenge her older sister, who mysteriously died before she could even co-pilot a chrysalis. Despite being in love with a wealthy childhood friend, Gao Yizhu, she resolves to avenge her sister even if it will likely mean her death. Ziqian successfully arranges to be paired with her sister's co-pilot, and while piloting during a Huanduan attack, sees his memories of the many girls he's abused. Ziqian overwhelms him with her spirit pressure and is the only survivor at the battle's end, making her a dangerous Iron Widow. Feared but still enlisted, she resolves to destroy the chrysalis system and its reliance on the sacrifice of female pilots. To take her off the board, the army pairs her with their strongest male pilot, whose concubines always die, the conscripted criminal, Li Shimin. During their first battle together, Ziqian and Shimin turn out to be equally powerful, though not a true balanced match, a rare pairing where neither will die from piloting. While both survive, the army struggles to figure out how it wants to use them. Gao Yizhi reappears, having joined the army as a junior strategist to help Ziqian, and pulls strings to be able to assist their training and help Shimin recover from the army's abuses, which includes induced alcoholism to make him fight. After a series of harrowing battles, the three are as enmeshed in the dangerous politics of Wuxia's military as they are the continued struggle against the Huanduans. And this is a little bonus. So Shirin has a whole bunch of fun content on their website about this book. They have a summary just for weebs. So this is the summary from their website.
All right, okay.
I'm sorry.
I'm ready.
It made me laugh.
Sorry, go.
Under siege by monsters beyond the Great Wall, like that shitty Matt Damon movie, except the monsters are Cybertronian-like sentient machines. A society that has the fashion, social customs, and beliefs of ancient China, but futuristic tech, fights back by pulling a Neon Genesis Evangelion and rebuilding their very invaders into giant mecha. A boy-girl pair in their teens, because of course they have to be teens, pilot the mecha Darling in the Franxx style, except in a much more sensible position, he hugs her from behind. Under command of human pilots, these mecha take on forms inspired by East Asian mythical creatures, and transformed like Transformers through Digimon-esque evolution lines that get more humanoid as you go on. The pilots physically embody them, so it's more Attack on Titan rules than Gundam. Oh, and they blast chi attacks, so the battles honestly read like a bunch of furries engaged in a Dragon Ball Z fight, and that's no one's fault but mine. And with that...
that was a masterpiece.
Some of their best writing, honestly, and that's saying a lot.
I'm in love with them.
And with that, we will go to the break, and we will be right back with a full breakdown and perhaps a mental breakdown as we go over what we thought about this book. Hey, Nico here in the break. Just wanted to let you know that while this is a podcast, and we'll always do our best to describe visuals we're commenting on, we'll also include links to the mechs and images we discuss in the show notes, and post actual photos on our show website. Along with that, make sure to check the show notes for content warnings as appropriate to the episode. That's all for now. Back to the show. First impressions, y'all. What are you thinking? What are you feeling?
This is possibly the greatest introduction or prologue of like
any fiction of the last several, honestly, decades, because it fulfills so many utilities in character crafting and world building, and like does so much economically for the rest of the story. And also it is straight up video game bullshit to the maximum. And I am so obsessed with it.
Alice?
I like women. Women are good. No, I think everything about this wants me to have the full multimedia franchise of this universe. I love this isn't Earth. It's Chinese culture inspired, but it's a whole different other thing. So just like, it gets right in front of you. They say, yeah, no, this isn't Earth. It's going to have a lot of things that you might know, but like, fuck you, go along with what I'm doing right here. And I loved it.
So, I've broken this down into about 5 different sections within the 2 actual sections of the book. So in the first kind of breakdown section I had was the prologue through chapter 5. And yeah, it's a lot of world building, but I really do like the prologue because it gets a ton of it out of the way very dynamically. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because
it's a very good prologue.
Yeah, it starts in third person. And the rest of the book is in first person, but I like that it starts in third person as like almost an observer of this, the way that most people would be. And introduces you to a cast of characters, I think, fairly heroically. Mm-hmm. And then it gets into the narrative that we will be immersed in, which is of someone who does not view them heroically, shall we say.
Wow, I wonder why.
Well, like, I just think it's like so... You're so primed for Yang Guang, who is like the perspective person in the prologue, to like be not necessarily the protagonist, but like in the main sort of fold of events. Mm-hmm. The way that it kind of shows you like, no, this is actually what we're doing here. Like, it doesn't even feel like a rug pull necessarily. It just feels like so absolutely, and I mean this both in like the colloquial, like this is cool way, and also in like the like moral way. It is so righteous what this fucking book does to Yang Wang in the story. And the last time I like stood up and yelled about a book, like after reading something, I can't even remember. I can't even tell you. Like,
but the moment after, yeah, I know the specific moment that I felt it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the prologue's very good, especially because the way it's framed is like the concubine isn't even given a name and her sacrifice is noble. Her family's getting compensation. She's not going to survive this fight, and that, like, you know, fighting requires noble sacrifices, but no, she's just a sacrificial lamb. But it's played in a way that's very well covered. My favorite part when I knew I loved this book is the chapter 1 title. That's when I was like, I'm in. Because the chapter 1 title is A Butterfly That Better Not Be My Dead Sister. And we are introduced to our main character, Wu Zetian. And she's literally like looking at a butterfly like, that better not be my sister from the dead telling me some shit that I need to do. Yeah, we're not even explaining if this is magic or spiritualism. Like, does this happen in this world? Who knows if it does, but these people believe it, and that butterfly might be my dead sister. I don't know. I loved it. It got me into the character.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a lot at work here when it goes from literally how the rest of the world sees this conflict and these pilots to the most small-time practical thing in the world, which is that Wu Zetian is... getting her unibrow plucked so that she can be conscripted or basically can enlist as a concubine pilot for Yang Guan, who was the pilot that her older sister was conscripted as a concubine or enlisted as a concubine pilot for. But she died before she even piloted with him. And so Zetian is coming from this place of like, she wants revenge, she wants to find out what happened, but she's also just very resentful of the fact that it happened to her sister at all and everything she's having to go through to get to the place she needs to be to try to execute her revenge. Because, say it right now, this book is very much about gender and about the roles that gender plays in societies, but specifically in this Chinese history-inspired world.
Yeah, like one of my early notes is just to like, and it's so funny that they mentioned
Darling and the Franks in their weeb summary because I was gonna say that show, while being kind of an anime disaster in like a lot of the ways that animes can be disasters, also has a lot of like really interesting and compelling things to say about gender and about human reproduction specifically. And I think that if it wasn't like In the Water or a direct influence, I think it's extremely interesting that we both have these like extremely vividly painted, like unique cockpits that like literally physically chain people to gender roles in the exact same way. And like a very similar story comes out of that. It's so interesting to me.
Yeah. Also in these early chapters, we meet Gao Yizhi, who is her initial love interest. And it's a very interesting way that he's introduced. It's he's the one plucking the unibrow. And like right off the bat, she wastes no time in describing him as like a lily pale, like pampered city boy with designer brand clothing who has a skincare routine.
He's baby girl.
He's baby girl. And I love it for him, but I love the fact that it's like he's having to help her with this beautification process so that she can basically be eligible on the meat market as a concubine pilot. And initially she wasn't going to tell him, and then she tells him, and he is just like absolutely devastated. And before she gets taken away by the military and tested and all the things that go into making her a pilot, he does try to marry her. Which is
I know there's an audiobook, and I know that we have to limit these, but I've been thinking about this quote since I read it. So can I just read one thing from this part where he's trying to marry her so she doesn't have to go die, right?
We mean no infringement on the rights of the audiobook holder, blah blah blah. Okay, go.
He tries to like hug her and like marry her, and she says, "Maybe if things were different, I could get used to this. Being cradled in his warmth and light, being cherished, being loved. But I have no faith in love. Love cannot save me. I choose vengeance."
Yeah.
Banger. I just clapped, sorry.
So good.
Brian's doing a live round of applause. Yeah, no. And I mean, that's like a perfect encapsulation of the dynamic. Yuju has been the person bringing like education to her because she lives in the country. She's a peasant child, and he's been bringing his tablet with his school notes and the internet and all this different stuff. He taught her how to read, and they've had this relationship where she's kind of baffled by his existence, but he keeps coming back at the end of every month and bringing new information and spending time with her. And it's clear that he is like infatuated with her, but the realities of her life are also something that's really not completely understandable or inaccessible to him. And so they end up kind of parting on bad terms when he tries to intervene before she enlists and offers to marry her. And she enlists anyway because, like in the quote that Brian read, she is dedicated to her vengeance.
We understand so much. It's so, economical in these literally 3 chapters that we understand how astronomical the weight of her decision is. They are doing the whole damn thing, right? Like she has her feet wrapped.
Yeah, her feet are bound. Yeah.
Chinese foot binding. I just need to here's how this book so fully affected me was the binding of her feet.
Yeah.
Which, let's just talk about it. Literally, you break the foot multiple times and shove it down into a smaller size. And this is done to our main character, Zutian. And just every visual, and it's a running theme throughout this book of her lotus feet, right? That's what you call it, is a lotus foot. And how she relies on, a walking stick or leaning on others in everything. When she is outside of the chrysalis, she is reliant on others. She is a feeble and fragile person, and not by choice. This was done to her. Not even by men.
Yeah, I have this section.
Oh, yeah.
I have this section because this was really powerful to me. I'll read this part. In the skin-cracking winter when I was 5, when the cold pressed in so ruthlessly that the rice terraces froze solid, my grandmother forced me to walk over the ice with no shoes. After the cold crystallized deep into my flesh, turning it purple, she shooed all of the men out of our house, sat me down on the frosted concrete ground, and soaked my feet in a wooden basin of boiled pig's blood and numbing medicine. Then 2 of my aunts held me down against the floor as my grandmother broke every bone along the arches of my feet to crush them in half. Like, that scene is so visceral,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
And it's so matter of fact, like this happened and they know what to do and there's a process. And again, it's the women in the life that did it. Like no man did that to Zetian, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate that this book is a lot about gender, and it's a lot about the violence that's done towards women, and there's a lot about the dynamics between men and women in a violent system. But I like that one thing that this book, and we'll get to it later in this section, but one thing that this book refuses to do is make that very simple.
Yeah.
Which I like a lot. It often interrogates what role women have to play in that system, in the violence of the system, and how men can be a part of it and how it damages them. And it's really interesting. It's a really, you know, if you hear something about gender and you think it's going to be kind of, I don't know, rah-rah girl boss feminism stuff, some things can be. This is not a flat book on these issues. It's very invested in talking about them.
Yeah.
And talking about them with the cultural nuance that comes from bringing a lot of setting stuff from ancient China. And yeah, I do like, at one point, I think her mother observes that, like, you know, lotus feet are important because they teach you to rely on other people. No one can do anything alone. And it's like, well, I mean, this was done. It wasn't like a natural thing that happened that forced you to rely on other people.
There are other ways. There are millions and trillions and billions of ways to teach that very valid lesson that don't
involve,
destroy your body.
But yeah, after the plucking of the unibrow and after a disastrous experience at home where we get kind of a feel for Zetian's relationship with her dad, her mom, her grandmother, the various people who live in the household, who are, a lot of them, the men at least, are watching a Huanduan battle on a tablet.
It's so sad. It's like literally heart-wrenching, her home
Yeah,
life.
it's really heart-wrenching. The dynamic is rendered super well.
I don't have the quote for it, but there's a very good one where she's like, internally, she's like, she wants her mom to like check in on her after a fight with her dad. And she's like, give me any reason that I shouldn't do this, because this would be a death sentence. Her revenge plan is a death sentence for her whole family, because to kill one of the greatest pilots of all time, they wouldn't just punish you, they'd punish your family. And she's like, I only loved my older sister because she looked out for me and everyone else is an asshole. So please, just somebody show me some humanity. And none of them do.
Yeah.
And she's like, this is it. Okay.
Because Alice used the word humanity, there's a moment where she's having this fight with her family, and Zetian's internal like monologue specifically says a girl is dying in a chrysalis in the name of mankind. And I thought it was interesting that the other word there is humanity, but I think it was very, very deliberate that she said mankind.
Yes. Use of words is very good in this. Like,
I do think later on she takes more of a national interest in like the battle with the Huanduns, but like at this moment in time, she's very much focused on the human cost and the specific, very personal human cost that she's experienced.
Yeah.
So after all of that, and after turning down Yiju's last minute attempt, please God, just marry me. Don't carve a wretched, bloody path through the world. She said, no, I choose violence. And she goes to be examined.
So real.
It's interesting. The examinations for qualifications as a concubine pilot are not just like, how good are you potentially at piloting a mech? How pretty are you? They involve a maidenhood test. So they're testing to see if the girls are virgins. And I like specifically an interesting historical detail. Maidenhood tests were often like dog shit.
Yeah.
Because what they're looking for is the hymen, and you can lose the hymen or break the hymen doing anything from horseback riding to bicycling. I imagine there were a lot of these girls who would be enlisted as concubine pilots who were doing a lot of physical labor. And I like that specifically there is a line where it's called out that one girl was dragged away screaming and crying, saying she'd never done anything with a man, and it made Zetian doubt the methods. And it's like, yeah, because probably she hadn't, and just the methods were insufficient, or the hymen isn't always an indicator of that. Yeah. You can have sex and not break the hymen. Like, it's interesting that they fold that in.
Yeah. This is so good because the half of this section is that, and the other half is, oh yeah, and also to measure your fucking bleach spirit pressure, they strap you to a table and make you play Galaga while you're rotating or whatever. It's so...
It's 4D!
It's so fucked. They put you on this fucked up tilt table, and you're basically having to play Flappy Bird to get the butterfly through this maze of things, and then based on that, they try to calculate. Yeah.
After they have scrubbed you down with bristle brushes, painted you up, put you in a very big gown, done your hair up, and then they're like, now your spirit test. After we've gotten you all pretty, checked your hymen, The spirit test is whatever. That's the last thing we do. Who gives a shit, right? You're gonna die.
She does mention that things were done out of order because the testing table wasn't ready yet. But like, yeah, these are all given equal weight. You need to be pretty for your potential pilot. You have to be virgin. And you have to have your spirit pressure measured. And spirit pressure is something, so we're given some numbers in the book. The average person's spirit pressure numerically is measured at an 84.
Yeah.
An exceptionally high concubine other than Wu Zetian, she gets measured at 118, and that's considered like, pretty good.
Good for them.
her. And 600 is the threshold to become a pilot if you are a boy. Maybe not a very good pilot, but you're qualified. And I believe Zetian comes in at like 620, just being measured here, which is higher than she was measured the last time they came to her village and measured. But during this sequence is where she gets in a fight because she has a very important tool, which is her hairpin that has a blade in it.
Yeah.
So one thing I do love in this scene, so concubines, let's talk about them, right? So Chinese culture, you would just have a shitload of concubines, right? And you would have your ladies in waiting and their concubines, and you just have a lot of them. And all of these pilots just have staples of concubines that they pick randomly, and their whole job is to keep the pilot happy, if you know what I mean, and then just die. And so they're going through more and more. And I really like that everyone knows what happens to a concubine. Like, there's how many bonded pairs?
3.
Not bonded pairs.
Once Zetian survives, yeah.
And so there's not many, but they tell people about this all the time. But like, I mean, you have to be pretty stupid to go into this thinking you have a chance to become one of those pairs. Because like, and despite all this, the girl sitting next to her is being such a little shit about the hair clip thing. And I think it really, because we talk about gender, and so like female on female violence, right? I think comes a lot through this book as a tool of, misogynistic culture. Like, oh, be shitty to her because she has a shitty little hair tie and she'll never get picked because you have to do something to try and rise to the top of the shit crop, even though you're all gonna die, right?
Yeah.
And I think that just goes through a lot of this, because when we meet one of the bonded pairs later, it really is this same vibe. That is the moment
for that, for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, she I almost said she eats. Well, later.
She eats.
She meets Yang Guang, and she has this weird situation where he's kind of smooth and he seems kind of sincere and he's kind of seductive and it's not in an outwardly obvious scummy way.
Yeah.
You're not like the other girls.
And I think it's so important. Yeah.
I might be naive, and like it's also one of those things where it's like I can't. This is one of those sections of a book that made me extremely aware that I was a male reading it, right? However, I will say Yang Guang had me fully bought in. I was convinced.
Yeah, and I think that's the point. Yeah.
And there are a couple really funny moments in this like little apartment scene with him because she like briefly talks about how, and like we don't have to get super into this. I'm sure it will become extremely relevant later. But she like offhand mentions this weird like Walt Disney frozen head conspiracy theory about the first emperor, and he's like, yes, totally.
Never not in love with that.
I hadn't thought of it that
running bit. It's so good.
So my notes are: you ever ask your new arranged husband if he buys into the whole Walt Disney's head is frozen conspiracy? And then my next note is: you ever imagine your new arranged husband doing Gunpla and fear falling in love? Because that's the next thing that happens.
Yeah, there's a lot of moments.
He's got a Gunpla desk.
Yeah, he's doing he's doing Gunpla that's made out of wood, metal, and glass, which just seems like it's probably very difficult, but it also seems like it kind of whips.
Yeah,
I like the part where she's like, oh, it's getting too real and I might be falling for him. Oh, better stand up off the couch and walk around looking at posters on the wall, because I've done that in men's apartments before.
Well, and like she does start to like do the thing, and he like stops to ask for her consent, which is like kind of the moment that wins you over in a big way.
Yeah, he does the whole playbook. This is I love this scene because it's important that you buy into it. It's important that you believe the patter. So that later, when you find out that the patter was just that, it was just patter, he uses these same lines on every concubine.
It was so so good.
It's so good.
It
and like
hurts more.
It hurts way more. And this is what I was talking about with the prologue too, because the prologue is carrying this entire sequence also, I think. And it's so important for Young Guang's character that we get introduced to him as someone who really seems to hate what he's doing and regret sacrificing these women. And then, come to find out he's a fucking monster. And it's really heart-wrenching.
The moment the alarm goes off, and they both know
Holy
that
shit.
he has to grab the first concubine pilot he has and get to the mech bay, basically.
Which, wild law. Wild rule
law
to have, by
Yeah.
the way.
But like he goes to grab her and she finally panics and like tries to fight him instead of playing along. And he just immediately pins her and has tape on hand to tape her mouth shut.
Reaches over to bedside table, pulls out roll of tape.
This is to like quick content warning.
Yeah.
Like barely subtextually, like this is a rape sequence.
Yeah, it's a rape scene.
Yeah, I mean, even like it's not like full sexual content, but I mean, he forces her into the mech.
She's crying. He carries her, shoves her lotus feet
Her
into
clothes
the...
are torn to get her to connect to the needles. Yeah. It's fucking miserable, but I do love it because it's not a literal rape scene, but it gives you the same visceral like understanding of what is happening to her.
And to be clear, like we're not condemning the story for having this, right? Like there's a lot of nuance and freight in different places here that makes it challenging to read, but also extremely tragic and like extremely narratively like fulfilling in a way that like gives the story gravity and gives it extremely high stakes. And it's so well executed, I think.
This book is doing something that I really appreciate that I don't think we see at all, especially in American media, which is there can be a lot of different depictions of violence on screen and in books, right? And there can be different gravities to that violence. It can be cartoonish. It can be one of the most sickening things you've ever seen. It can be deeply cerebral. It can be nothing. Sex is not treated that way, right? Like we don't have casual sex scenes in the way that we did even like a decade ago, but also just in general, like we don't have casual sex, not showing stuff, not porn, but just like implication that sex is happening in the way that we have implications that violence is happening. And we also just as a culture just seem to have completely stopped even looking at sexual violence. Like I feel like there was such a backlash against the exploitative films like revenge flicks and horror, right? Where it was like, this was clearly just happening on screen to titillate some viewers and to motivate the plot. It was not about the woman involved. And like, there was such a backlash to that. I feel like people think that they cannot talk about this at all, and yet it still exists. So we end up in this weird situation in society where this happens, and we just don't talk about it even more than we used to. Like, it's not mentioned in media. It's not mentioned in anything. And seeing this was so refreshing because, again, it's not a straight up rape scene, but it is hitting all the notes. It is talking about the issue. And throughout this book, you're going to see things like that have that feeling to it.
And it's also the foot binding again, right? I mean, their concubines' bodies are permanently altered by these acupuncture needles. So. Yeah,
but this moves us into the next section. This is when we see our first Hunduin battle. We made a lot of other pilots and chrysalises, kind of rapid fire.
It's so sick, dude.
Yeah. And
also,
this
the wall
is when
isn't a wall, guys.
Yeah.
Just, I want to be very clear. The wall is a state of being and also a mountain range with towers along it.
And also, it's a wall. Like, there are places where it is indeed a wall.
Sometimes you have to put bricks in it.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to have day laborers put bricks in the wall.
Yeah, but this is when we see how the mechs work. What did y'all think of this? We talk a lot about cockpits in this. So, like, what did y'all think about these?
I mean, this is a full-on Evangelion sequence, right? Because, like, we have plot A, which is the nine-tailed fox, which is Yang Guang's mech, stomping through, clawing, doing the laser beams out of its mouth. They're called chi blasts, but, like, let's be real.
They're lasers.
They're lasers.
We got green laser.
We got green laser.
And that's the Earth laser.
And then, plot B, we have like the existential mind realm where Zetienne is like walking around
the
smacking.
Yin-Yang realm.
The Yin-Yang realm.
Not yet.
No, this is the mind realm. This is like the interior of Yang Guang's psyche, right? Where it's like she has to walk around and like smack peach emojis. To like,
well, she's in this like fetid, overgrown green area, and she's running into this fruit, and she's hearing a child crying. And the only instruction she's been given about this weird psychic experience she might have as a pilot is that she should seek out the pilot in this area and try to comfort him.
This logic is so fucking sick. Oh my God.
It's a big dream logic sequence where she is fighting to remember why she's here and the fact that if she does give in and just comfort this child and just not confront anything that's happening in this realm, she will die. But she keeps forgetting.
It's like full chills because she realizes it multiple times, but one time it's specifically phrased like, they told me to follow my instincts and care for this child. That's what all the other concubines do. So it must not be the way to live. And it's just like, damn. So anyway, she strangles a child.
I want to just talk, because we kind of glossed over it, what it is to pilot one of these. So the chrysalises are Hyundun husks.
Yeah.
So dead husks that they were able to... We don't really know how they're doing it, but they're making them into chrysalises.
Well, we get a little bit of detail. So the Hyundun are made out of spirit metal, so they are made of metal. And if you have spirit pressure and chi, you can shape it. And so the implication is that they had all these husks, and then someone created the art of using your chi and your spirit pressure to shape them, which is really cool.
They invented metal bending.
And so what that looks like to pilot it is they literally have these like suits of armor, and they go in, and the female sits in front, and then the male like legs around her, hugs her, and then they both become the chrysalis. So they, by channeling their chi into it, their physical beings still exist, but they are, for all intents and purposes, they are in that mind realm. They are part of the husk.
The Attack on Titan reference in that other summary was pretty spot on. Like they're very like one and the same, which, you know, this is just mecha in general. Like no matter if you have buttons and steering wheel or joystick or pedals, like you are the mech now when you're piloting it. You know what I mean?
Transcending your body.
But I love that it's literal
here. To get to that point, you have to go through the other person's mind realm and understand it to be able to do this together. Because you have to do this with another person. You can't solo.
Putting on Lycra and doing ballet together for hours while there's a countdown and an angel's falling from the sky is not enough. You have to go into the mind realm together.
You have to go into the mind realm. But yeah, and there's also, when you connect to the chrysalis, there are acupuncture needles that go into your spine. And acupuncture comes up a couple of different times in this book, but that's like the primary interface.
All this to say, it is unbelievably fucking sick.
Yeah.
It's so fucking cool. So yeah, goes in, finds the child, is like, well, everything they told me is predicated on me just being here to die for a man, so I'm not going to do anything they fucking told me. Kills the child, strangles it to death, which...
We love a child murder.
Jutien is great, guys. Jutien's great.
Yeah, and so from there, she's able to transcend to a higher state of like a mind realm, which she describes...
The drift. I mean, the yin-yang realm.
Yeah, the drift. Basically the drift, right? She's able to transcend into the yin-yang realm. And there, she can actually see and confront Young Wan and be like, hey, motherfucker, it's payback time.
This is when I stood up on my seat and was yelling and hooting and hollering. And my fiance was like, what is going on? And I was like, you have no fucking idea. Go read a book.
It's so good because it's like, she's like, well, women are weak and he's wearing armor and I'm just in half robes. And then she's like, this is a mind. Like, this is all just about your spirit pressure and what you want to happen. So fuck the fact that I have lotus feet. I'm going to kill this asshole.
Yep. She manifests spirit armor around herself, which is spirit metal that's been molded to you that a lot of the pilots wear. She pulls a dagger out of it, which is really cool. And she fucking goes for him and she kills the motherfucker in the mind realm.
She kills the motherfucker. It is so hype. Also, we forgot to mention one thing that's about to come up and be kind of important, which is that people have Pokemon types in this.
We will be covering this later. Don't worry. The game is all about it, but they do have elemental types. This is based on Wuxing, which is the Chinese system of 5 elements.
Yeah, there's a Outlaw Star character who uses this. It's all of this is just always so good.
Hey, they're also Fire Emblem unit types, so jot that down. So they all are better against each other.
I have a lot of fun facts about that later.
The one line I wanted to call out from this is, so kills him. There's this cool scene where she's like controlling the mech and everything. And
doing bad at first because she doesn't know how to fucking do it.
But she ends up doing okay in the battle. Anybody have anything to say about the battle? Because mine's the part where after the battle, she just...
No, so she does well. He had already ascended it. So like Sharon said in the summary, which I'm glad I read it because now it's really useful.
Yeah,
there are like
literally
Digimon evolution lines, right? So most of the time when these mechs are parked, they're in kind of a bestial form. So the nine-tailed fox looks like a big nine-tailed fox. And then pilots can ascend the form and they make it more humanoid. More like a Gundam or your typical mech in the second stage of the form. And then there's a heroic third form, which is only very rarely obtained because usually when they ascend to the second form, the concubine dies.
Yeah.
So he had already taken it to the second form and she ascends it to heroic on her own.
It's unbelievably sick, and then I mean, this is just all around a sick as fuck mecha battle as she like learns to pilot it by herself. But the specific moment where she realizes, I think that like, and the book is so good because it doesn't actually say this out loud, but I think this is what we're supposed to read because later on when she has to like rewrap her bindings, she thinks about this, is that she realizes that she is free for this moment. In this form, she can walk without pain. And that is what enables her to like absolutely have an Asuka moment. It's just so good.
It's such an Asuka Langley moment.
It's really good.
Yeah, it's so good.
But yeah, they finish the fight and she comes around and looks back and Youngwong is dead in his seat the way that the concubine pilots usually are.
She literally, so... anime as fuck moment, right? It's raining. There are camera drones zooming around. Everybody's freaking out like, oh, the strategists are freaking out. What happened? Oh, that
what
was
happened
so
out there?
fucking cool.
Because from the external view, all that we know is that the nine-tailed fox went out there, hit second form, started acting weird as fuck, worked jankily for like 5 minutes, then did some beast mode shit, went to heroic form, and finished the fight. So externally, it's like, what the fuck happened? Yeah.
Like, they must have hit balanced pair if they can do that, right? We're going to see our new Iron Widow and Iron Prince.
Iron Princess and Iron Prince, yeah.
And she comes out, drops the motherfucker's body down, and this is the line is, I drop Yang Guang in front of me and set a tiny lotus foot on his corpse.
I know.
Iconic. Queen shit. Queen shit.
So good. And she just like roars into the drones.
I'm your nightmare.
She's like
your nightmare.
Maximum adrenaline high. Like,
yeah,
it's so good.
It's really incredible. So she does all that, and that takes us into our next section of chapters, which are a lot about Zetian having to face the Rammies, bro. Oops, I forgot about the Rammies.
We'll be damned if her conses don't quench here.
Because this was very much a suicide mission. Like, that's why she turned down Gao Yiju. She's like, I am going to do this revenge, and they're going to kill me, and they're going to kill my entire fucking household later. Like, what's important is the guy will be dead.
This was one of the moments where I was like, I wish we had a little bit of time to breathe here. Like, we should have had a little bit more. And I mean, again, at this point, like, knowing what I know, I fully blame the publisher and the editors, but we should have gotten a lot more of her in prison waiting to find out what the fuck is going to happen to her.
Yeah.
I do like how it's handled, which is like, it talks about, hey, she knows she could kill herself if she really wanted to in prison and just be done with this. She's gotten her revenge, but she chooses not to. And the psyche that she's going through and her thoughts on it. And then, but it's because it takes 2 weeks to recharge, and then they don't know what to do with her, right? Because it's like, well, what the fuck?
Yeah.
This shit doesn't happen.
They dragged her, after the initial battle, they dragged her before the military advisors.
Not just anybody, 2 other Chrysalis pilots who are fighting alongside her in the battle.
Yeah, they do the citizen's arrest.
Are like, you killed our friend.
Yeah.
And they're dragging her. And
they drag her in to see the advisors, and they're Zhuge Liang, who is the army's chief strategist, and Sima Yi, who we will see more of a lot in this book.
You would.
But she's dragged. She's dragged before them, and they're just like, what the fuck do we do with her? Oh, put her with Li Shimen. And it's like, okay.
Yep. So just quick shout out, one of the pilots, and he'll come back later too, Xing Tian, is piloting like literally Viral's mech from Gurren Lagann. It is literally that. The nipples for eyes, or the laser eyes for nipples and everything. Like, it is so that. And it was just so good to see
the
him.
Headless Warrior is so good.
The Headless Warrior is a very good mech. Yeah. But yeah, no, so they get dragged in. She is put in prison, and eventually there's an emergency, and it's been long enough, and she knows she's going to be called upon to pilot with Ximin. They go to her prison cell. I did mark a line. I hope I can find it quickly, but there it is. When the door shrieks open to the side, I'm right there, immediately face to face with the soldiers. They jerk back. I just love that. It's like you go to a prison cell and you open the door and the inmate is just standing there. Like, whoa.
Are you ever on your Hannibal Lecter shit? Like,
yeah, she is on her Hannibal Lecter shit. It's really good. But yeah, so they drag her out there to pilot with Li Shimin. And the thing about Li Shimin, so he's alluded to earlier in the book. He's like the disgrace of the program because he is a convicted murderer. He killed his family specifically, which they talk about, like, the capital punishment in this world is patricide. He killed his father.
Yeah.
So he was on death row and he got pulled out because they were testing, and his spirit pressure is insane. He is the only person who pilots a king class chrysalis called the Vermillion Bird, and every one of his concubine pilots dies. His spirit pressure is so high.
It's over 9,000!
None of them really have a fighting chance. And that's specifically why she's paired with him, because, you know, it's alluded to, like, they have a name for what she is. They call her an Iron Widow. So it's alluded to that this has happened before. Mm-hmm. But they don't let women who can do this stick around.
She's never heard that before.
Yeah,
Nobody
it's
talks
been basically
about Iron
erased.
Widows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, they get put in the Vermillion Bird together, and that's when Zetienne experiences his fiery mind realm.
Quick, what's everybody's spirit type? Can you tell by what their mind realm is? Can you tell what their spirit type is?
I think it's important. It's good to play with the symbolism.
It's good to play with symbolism, and also, like, this is so, because, like, the mind realms are full stream of consciousness. The writing style completely changes, right? Because you're in, like, dream logic, and, you know, not even, like, one event has to necessarily flow into another, and yet you're able to make sense of this whole situation where Li Shimin is a fire type, and he has the fire realm. Mm-hmm. But, like, because she's there and she knows how to kind of expand her own presence, it starts to become tinged with these metallic elements because her element is metal. And it's, like, full anime, trippy Evangelion bullshit in, like, such a neat, discreet little package. I went back and read this section like 4 or 5 times because I thought it was so, like, poetic and, like, vivid and weird. And, like, I was like, I could imagine myself having this dream and, like, losing myself in it, which is what she's kind of struggling with.
Yeah, and I really love the symbolism because these being dream sequences, you can just kind of do the damn thing, which is like, if we think back on Yangguan's mind realm, it was this, like, fetid swamp. He was earth type. Or no, he was wood type. That's what it was.
Yes.
No. It was the nine-tailed fox is a wood type, and he was an earth type. So he was an earth type, and it is just, like, stinking and overgrown. And the girls in his mind realm that he remembers are fruit. Like, they are like these things to be plucked and consumed. And when Zetienne, like, interacts with them, that's when she gets the memories and she finds out that, like, he's been reusing all of the same lines on the same girls. He's beaten girls. He's abused girls. Like, nothing that she thought might have convinced her to spare his life was real. And, like, she gets all that. In Ximen's mind realm, it's all fire. And there's, like, swords everywhere and these blades. And she's trying to catch herself on the blades so that she doesn't fall into the fire, because she's like, if I fall into the fire, I'm done for. And so she makes wings for herself, like the Vermillion Bird, and starts to try to ascend. And she is assaulted by these birds who are up in the sky above this fire realm, who are catching on fire and screaming.
It's so good.
And as they hit her, she's getting the memories of the girls who died with Ximen. But I love the difference in imagery from fruit to be plucked and consumed in this kind of stinking, rotten to the core kind of, like, mind of this guy.
Nico.
Yeah.
Who's back?
The birds are back.
The birds are back.
The flaming birds that are metaphors for dying concubines are back.
But I love that contrast, and I love that you can just be really obvious with it because we're doing dream logic.
We're doing dream logic, and, like, the story will literalize this in a lot of ways later, but I think this is the first time we see it, that Li Shimin is, you know, Yang Guang had like a stable and, like, you know, traversable and, like, at least vaguely sensible mind realm. Li Shimin is drunk and angry all the time. His mind realm is disjointed and makes no sense. It just has nothing but violence for a representation. You know what I mean?
And I love the contrast too. So those things contrast, but then also the representation of Yangwang in his mind realm is a crying child who wants help. He's really helpless and weak, and he's wailing for comfort. And in his mind realm, Li Shimin is confused.
Thoughtful little boy on a beach.
Yeah, but like he's confused, but he's like calmer and more put together than the person she's seen thus far, which I did not physically describe Li Shimin. He's a big dude. He's very muscular. He is half from an ethnic group that they marginalize. I think Alice brought him up earlier, the Zhangdi. So he has kind of different features that to her eyes and to a lot of people's eyes make him look more severe. He's unshaven. They've got him in a metal muzzle. He is on the full Hannibal Lecter shit and in an army jump or in a jumpsuit. Yeah.
I want to talk about the muzzle. In manhwa, which are long strip comic books, you will often see sometimes the sexy, big, tall guy in a muzzle and leash. This man is literally in a muzzle and leash.
Yeah,
he is hot and he is sexy. And the whole time I read his character, I was like, oh, I've read this manhwa before.
I'm in love with him.
I'm ready for this. I know it's gonna happen. She's gonna open his cold heart, which boy howdy, I was wrong.
Yep. But yeah, and his figure in his mind realm is he's still lost and he still needs comfort, but he's way more collected and way more alone, like isolated.
Yeah.
Than Yangwang was. But yeah, she attacks him. She pushes him off of his island that he's waiting on.
We've got our second kid killed. Good job.
Yeah, that's a two mind kid killed.
2 mind kids killed.
Commander Shepard, take note. If you had killed the kid in your recurring dreams in Mass Effect 3, it would not have had to end that way. This is my pet theory now.
So I think this is when, like, Zhu Tian is a great character. And why I think she's a great character is because at no point am I really questioning her actions. I'm like, no, yeah, that's the right move. Yeah. A woman of action. So she breaks out of that after killing him. She's in the yin yang. First thing, grab a fucking knife and go for the kill.
Yep, do it again. Double kill.
Don't fucking give him a chance to figure out that you're here.
Yeah.
So she pulls a knife from her armor and goes for it because her type is metal. Right? We've established that.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just love that. She is just a woman of action.
Absolutely.
And, you know, this is like the weird glob moment, right? Like the Vermillion Bird becomes this like weird representation of turmoil.
Yeah, because they're struggling in the yin-yang realm, and neither of them can get the upper hand. Like, her type is metal, his type is fire. When she's trying to stab him, her knives are melting, and, like, he's fighting back, but he's, like, I feel like almost baffled, you know? Because we find out later, he's never been very sensible to what happens when he pilots this mech.
Nope.
So he's very suddenly aware, and there's a little woman trying to kill him. But as they struggle, they're evenly matched, and the bird tries to ascend to a higher form, and yeah, it creates this like horrific blob because no one's giving it any focus or intention. There's just a lot of energy.
Yeah. This ends in like a stalemate. This is the other thing I wanted to read. This is the other quote I wanted to read because it's so good, but it's after the fight. So if we have anything more to say about this blob
thing. I just wanted to wrap up.
Mine's also after the fight, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to wrap up by saying, so as it turns out, they both survive this fight, and it's because they are evenly matched, but they are not a bonded pair. They're not a matched set. And the distinction there that I found really interesting is that, like, match bonds support each other and work together. She and Li Shimin just kept, like, when one spirit pressure grew, the other grew to match it. Like, they were in, like, an arms race almost, and they stayed perfectly equally balanced, so neither of them died, but they definitely were not working together. And I love that because at one point he quotes, so, like, Li Shimin is kind of the dishonor of the military because he's this convict who has a spirit pressure of, like, 10,000, right? It's insane, his spirit pressure. They took ambient measurements while the blob shit was happening. Between the two of them, they got up to around 18,000 spirit pressure. So they were escalating like fuck, and neither of them would back down. But I thought that was such an interesting thing. They're not initially a partnership. They were not working together. They just both refused to die.
Brian, ready for your quote.
So yeah, they both live, and then she kind of wakes up in the cockpit, and you know, for context, like as a reminder, no concubine has ever survived one time piloting with Li Shimin. So she says, "Hey," when they both wake up in the cockpit. And this is the quote. Slowly he turns back, leash swinging over his jumpsuit. His eyes bloom wide over his collar, over his muzzle and collar, watering, glistening in the lucent vapor, as if he's lived his whole life in black and white, and he's only now seeing color for the first time. And then she says, surprise. Hello?
It's so good.
She's
wiping blood from her nose, and she's like, surprise, I lived, bitch.
I lived, bitch.
Roblox, oof. I gotta sit down.
It was so good, because right before the fight, he's going in, and he refuses to look at her, and she keeps going, hey, and she's like trying to duck in front of his
so
view,
funny.
and he keeps
She's
looking
so
away.
irritating.
She's like, don't you want to look me in the eyes before you kill me? And then at the end, she's like, hey, and he looks at her. It's like, bitch, I lived.
Yeah. Oh. No notes.
So good.
The moment that they share, like, because things get shitty again after this, but like they have this moment of privacy. They blew out the speakers. The generals cannot speak to them. The armed police haven't barged in yet to recapture Ximen, basically, that they do every time he pilots. They have this moment, and Ximen, like in the quote that Brian read, is like just completely gobsmacked by the fact that she lived. And they just like gently touch hands. And it's this like supreme moment of tenderness that will become such a hallmark of Li Shimen's character. And like, this is like one of your earliest glimpses of it. It's breathtaking. It's fantastic.
It's fantastic. I'm so sorry. I found another quote I have to read, but we'll get to it.
Yes. Go.
Well, it's so what basically happens after this is the same thing happens as the first time, where they get in trouble and are taken to that like interrogation room or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But both of them now.
Yeah, they get debriefed.
Both of them now. This is, I think, where we find out that Li Shimen is constantly drinking, and the soldiers are just giving him alcohol because it's not worth fighting about.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the, power play where she just walks up to the guy's gun and says, like, if you don't want my spirit pressure, then just shoot me because I'm not afraid of dying. And it's like super, super sick.
Yeah, she calls their bluff.
There's one line in here, so in this whole thing where she's basically like, you don't know what to fucking do with a woman who can hold her shit. Y'all don't know. And so they're talking, and he's like, who is she? And they're like, oh, that's the person who killed Yang Guang. And he's like, oh, what? He died?
Yes.
And they're like, yeah, there was a giant funeral in front of the wall. How did you miss that? To which, of course, Jietian has been in prison since that fight. She doesn't know anything of what happened. So she goes, and this is the quote, a funeral, I say with mock callousness, did the attendees know he died like a girl?
Yeah.
My quote is actually immediately after this. Sorry, we're just reading the book, but it's just too good. Because they are outraged by this comment, and her internal monologue goes, I could fire back with how people's daughters die in chrysalises all the time, but I don't want to put any effort into justifying myself. I know his outburst is coming more out of his unease about me than any degree of empathy. He sure wasn't this devastated during our first chat, right after Yang Guang's death. No, he's trying to worm into my mind and shackle me down with morals so he can feel more comfortable about my existence. Too bad. I am exactly the kind of ice-blooded, rotten-hearted girl he fears I am, and I am fine with that. May he stay unsettled.
Oh.
Stay winning, Zetienne! Stay winning!
She said die mad about it.
Die mad!
Die mad, mother.
It's so good. But yeah, they're brought into this debrief, and the army is just like, what the fuck happened out there? Who the fuck are you people? Why the fuck are you doing this? And they're getting information, but there's very much like an interrogation, and they're trying to figure out what the fuck to do with them. And they really do try it. They really try to threaten Zetienne, because she's like, so are we going to get a suite? Are we going to get the shit we're supposed to get as pilots? Are we going to get what we're owed? Because if I'm going to be doing this work, I want to be compensated for it, which is something important. You should always be compensated for your work. Look up your local labor union. I think these pilots should unionize. Anyway, the concubine union. That's when she calls their bluff, because she grabs a soldier's gun and is basically going to commit suicide by cop, and is like, if you are willing to kill me and just throw my potential away, then you're going to do it right here. And I think this is when, so I talked about like our first glimpse into Li Shimin being a softer character than maybe we think. I think this is Li Shimin's first glimpse into this woman is insane.
Yeah.
It's really good. You get a little bit of him in the background, like, what the fuck is happening?
Like, this is a hardened killer, the man who has had the most spirit pressure since the late Emperor Head in a Jar Walt Disney. And he's looking at this crazy little woman who's like, I don't give a shit. I'll fucking die.
me.
I don't care.
But yeah, so the army decides this could be a huge strategic win. They have been trying to reclaim the Zhou province, which was lost the last time the Great Wall collapsed and taken over by the Hunduns. And they're like, listen, if we can actually master the power of these two and get them set up as a proper matched pair and get them trained, this could turn the tide of the war.
Mm-hmm.
And that leads us into our next section. So in the next couple chapters, we get the politics and dynamics of the Great Wall training facility and the pilots. So we've seen a lot of pirates. We've seen a lot of pilots in the background of the various fights. We've had different mechs called out, the Headless Warrior, the Rabbit, I forget what that's
Moon
called.
Rabbit.
The Moon Rabbit. We've had a couple of different types called out. But
they're all so sick, you guys. They're all so sick. I'm so sorry.
They're all really cool. So look forward to our next episode. In part 2, we will be rating the mechs. We won't be doing that this time. But like, just keep in mind, there's a lot of cool mechs. And for my co-host, Sheeran likes to get art commissioned. And so there's a good amount of art for this being a book, especially compared to Hard Reboot. Yeah.
I base all of my choices on the written word only.
If
the pictures were to be considered for my rating, they would be put in here.
Wow, a real 180.
This will be great. So don't look at them, and then after you do your rating, I'm going to show you them because they're cool.
Oh, I haven't looked into any of this. When you told me that the author of this book made cosplay of the
they do a lot of
clothing
cosplay
in this world.
Yeah,
that's when I knew I couldn't. If I started looking, it would be over for me.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, so these pilots who have been in the background before, we're seeing them literally in a mess hall. You know, we're seeing them as Zetienne and Shimin for the first time ever. For Shimin, are brought in their proper uniforms as a matched pair, like as people who are equals. And they're brought into basically the boys' club. They're brought into the training facility. What did y'all think? I'm especially interested in Alice's take as kind of a milsim nerd. How'd you like the after hours mess hall vibes? I was thinking a lot about All You Need Is Kill.
Number one, why would you have your training facility right on the front line? That's just, I mean, I know the Hunduns don't really get over the wall, but that seems very dangerous. That's all I'm going to say. So this whole scene is great because they get them dressed up and put in like the bonded pair outfits, and they have to just literally walk through the training camp, which is also a city because there's cities along the wall.
Yeah.
And he's drunk out of his mind.
Yeah.
She has lotus feet. They could barely walk straight together.
Yeah, it's a mess.
It's so funny and good.
One detail that happens and is incredibly funny, when he's given his uniform, he's also given glasses.
Yep.
Because as it turns out, the scowling that Li Shimin is kind of famous for is squinting because he needs Coke bottom glasses. He needs thick.
It's so good.
Prescription glasses.
Speaking of which, real quick, I want to breeze through a few things that just happened kind of in quick succession right before this, which is just the domestics in the jail cell.
Oh, yeah, that's a good...
By the way, they put them into Li Shimin's jail cell.
Yeah, put them both in there.
The most powerful pilots in the world.
We get the literalization of the cockpit, right? Which is that Sima Yi says, like, you're his wife now, so go live in the jail cell together. But anyway, Li Shimin can read, and he's not dumb. So points up on Robot Jocks guy.
I can't read, but I'm not dumb. Don't pull that shit on me.
Damn, he really got it over on Apollo or whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
Achilles. I'm so sorry. Achilles.
Lee also, like, we get that Lee never wants to fight because he can always feel the moment the concubine pilot dies. It's always horrendous. He hates doing this. He's so angry. Zetienne is extremely unfair to him and regrets it instantly, but he's too, like, kind of just withdrawn and sad about his life to kind of say anything about it.
Well, there's a really great dynamic here, which is that we're getting people talking about gender and violence for the first time. I'm so sorry I almost glossed over this scene because this is so important for Li Shimin's character.
We find out that his brothers were rapists, and that's why he killed everybody.
This is where we find out why he killed his brothers and father. And they're talking about the fact that, you know, they've been put in this situation. Zetienne is expected to act as his wife, and the soldiers who put them in the cell are making it sexual. There's clearly a sexual undercurrent to this. And she's locked in this room with him in the dark, and she's very much aware that, like, she can't fight him off in the physical realm. Yeah. She could only fight him in the spirit realm. And so there's this threat of sexual violence, but they talk about it, which is, it's this incredible scene between them.
It's a really good scene. And another thing that's like underpinning this too is, again, Yang Guang did so much lifting in the beginning because, like, no matter what Li Shimin does here, we're not trusting his ass.
Yeah.
Yang Guang damaged us beyond repair, right?
Yeah, we already know that there are people who will play games to get what they want. And she specifically calls that out and is like, I know men have urges. I know they're unstoppable. This chapter is
called The Lies Boys Tell, to be clear.
Yeah. And so she's like, I know you're a beast who can't master yourself. Like, just, you know, let's get it over with in a reasonable manner. I'm going to set some ground rules. And that's when he is like, I think you've been told incorrect things about men. Men can control themselves. Men. They're not. Yeah, he's like, not all men. No, but he literally is like, no, I'm sorry. The violence is worse than you think it is because we're not mindless.
Yeah.
We can make choices. Yeah. And men who do this stuff make choices. And my brothers made a choice when there was a girl he cared about and he was kind to, and he found out that some people were blackmailing her, and he went and he beat them up. And then he comes home and finds out that his brothers are gang raping her. And he kills them with a cleaver. And his father comes home and finds them before he can leave and puts him in a position where he has to kill his father as well. And then it's you know, his life is over. He's 16, I think, when this happens.
16, straight A student, like laureate.
Yeah. He's doing everything he can to try to succeed in the world, despite the fact that things are really stacked against him, being basically multiracial in the society. And everything is destroyed by this act of violence his brothers did on purpose. And he makes that point. It's like, no, men can make this choice because I've seen them make it. And I refuse to make it.
Knowing he couldn't do anything, because if he said anything or she reported it or anything, they wouldn't believe him because he's not Han.
There's such an interesting, and this has been talked about because some people flatten this, and Sheeran has had to comment on this. So much dimension to Ximen's character and his treatment is impacted by the fact that he's mixed race.
Yeah.
And like, that means so much in the society. And that's a lot of how people are able to treat him as a beast, is because in their minds, they are treating him as a subhuman, you know, and that is such a component of the way that his masculinity is enforced and is enacted. Like, it was so, like I said, I was so grateful to get into this book. And initially it can be like, wow, this is really man-hating or whatever. But it's like, you are in the mind of a woman who has had extreme gendered violence.
Yeah.
Either she's been the subject of it, or, you know, like, she lost her older sister. And then as the book goes on, it continues to add nuance to the understanding of gender in this world in a way that I so much appreciated. Like, it's here to talk about gender, and it's talking about the whole damn thing. So
cafeterias. So
is there anything gayer than fighting in a cafeteria? Says this book, and also all you need is kill.
So the highlights of this cafeteria, number one, pretty much the only women here are the old aunties, which is what she calls them, who work as cafeteria workers.
Yep. Yeah, they're cooking.
I also love in any mech media or any milsim media when, yes, we have a cafeteria. So, like, in the Air Force, I always use the Air Force as the metaphor because I think, like, a fighter jet is a great metaphor for a mech, because the amount of work to make a fighter jet functional takes so many people, but there's only the pilot and maybe a co-pilot, and they're the ones who get all the praise, and they get to eat in the officer's mess, and they get lieutenant, like, they have certain titles.
That's a really good point, yeah.
And so you have this cafeteria, and you have maintenance workers, you have army soldiers, everybody's eating here because, you know, just part of the culture is we all eat in one cafeteria, and the pilots are all there, and every pilot but Li Shimen has a crown, right? Because that's a sign that you are a master of a chrysalis, right?
Yeah, you wear your spirit medal, yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't.
Yeah.
Li Shimin is not allowed to wear a spirit medal, right? Because he's a convict.
He doesn't have a title. He's specifically, like, everybody's referred to as, like, a prince corporal or an earl captain or whatever. He is Pilot Lee.
Also,
that's so interesting.
They have TVs everywhere that show the current rankings by
And
spirit
I love
power.
this because, again, Li Shimin is the shame of the military. He's this convict. They treat him less than trash. And so the scoreboard, the number 1 spot for 2 years running, has been left blank because he's there and they refuse to acknowledge him. So it's just this lacuna that's left. And people are competing for the number 2 spot.
Yeah, it's...
Another
so
fun part
good.
is it switches, like, you know, it's like a display screen to a picture
of Yang
Guang's obituary. And she comments on it in her internal thoughts of like, you think they would have turned that off because I was coming? And then she's like, no, because I'm a woman, and so it shouldn't matter. Like, they are revering him because he's a man who died. It doesn't matter that the woman who killed him is here.
Well, and I also
they
think
don't
it's,
care.
you know, we find out later that what happens here was kind of socially engineered in a way. And so I think that was also probably part of that.
Yeah, they get the scholar off of them, and then the...
Yeah, because their strategist, Sima Yi, is with them, and somebody bumps into him and spills soup on his robes. Oh, no. So he has to go change. So then it's just Zetian and Shimin.
Sima Yi is the guy... This is the perfect character moment. Sima Yi is the guy who's going to have a full-blown screaming tantrum when someone spills something on his robe in the middle of the cafeteria. That is who he is.
You have dealt with Sima Yi if you have worked retail. But yeah, so he's gone, and then they're just left with the 2 of them and their soldier escort, and then a fight breaks out in the cafeteria, and the soldiers jump in to deal with the fight, which leaves Shimin and Zetian isolated and, like, open to attack. And sure enough, some guys come over and are slagging Shimin off and calling him shit and he's not doing anything. And it's driving Zetian nuts that he's not engaging, he's not protecting himself, he's just taking whatever punishment. And then the moment the guy turns on Zetian, Shimin goes beast mode.
Yep. It's so good.
Chokes a dude out with his own leash.
I'm so in love with him. Yep.
Yeah.
It is... Again, while not wearing spirit armor, beats the shit out of these people. It's also a really good scene because, like, she ends up helping by slamming a fucking tray on one of them. Nobody steps in to help, of course. Everybody's just cheering, fight, fight, fight.
Zetian rolls so hard.
And it's a character moment, too, because, like, his element is fire. He is going in, and he has this fighting style that she notes. He has this constantly turning fighting style. Even though he's drunk, his drunkenness, like, works with it, and he is just moving, he is throwing the beatdowns. But she is noticing details, like somebody getting ready to try to execute him gangland style with a chi blast, and she interrupts with, like, the strategic piece at the strategic moment, which I love that being a reflection of her being a metal type. Like, she is precise.
Precision.
We then get a terrible scene. An attempted murder, but another rape metaphor, right?
Yeah. So basically we find out this was all engineered because Shimin gets put in solitary confinement. So then Zuchin is alone in their cell. And the pilot of...
The Headless Warrior, yeah.
Xingtian comes in and throws a bag over her head and tries to strangle her to death in her cell.
Steps on her foot so she can't run away.
Yeah, he steps on her foot specifically, and that immobilizes her. Like, oh my God, you really feel for her in the scene. And then who should appear?
Let's go.
To help out. You forgot about him, but he's here. It's Gao Yuju. Yuju is back.
Yuju!
This was the second time I stood up and was screaming and hooting and hollering.
I said there's absolutely no way. They're not doing what I think they're doing. There's no way.
They absolutely did.
Buckle up, because this only goes to the best possible place.
Yes, it only gets better.
Place.
So Yuju has appeared. It turns out he has joined as a junior strategist, and using his wealth and connections because he's the son of a media mogul, he gets them. First of all, he thwarts this assassination attempt. He sits outside her cell all night, even when soldiers are assigned, because he doesn't trust a bitch. Which, oh, he's a real one. So he waits there all night, and then he immediately goes about getting Shimin and Zetian their own suite. It's not super fancy, but like an actual place to live instead of this cell, and immediately begins work on helping with their training, but specifically trying to address Shimon's alcoholism. Because he goes into the cell. There's such a sensory moment that I love, and it's also elemental. When Zetian first enters the cell, she's like overwhelmed by the smell of grain alcohol from how much alcohol that Shimon has been drinking. When Yiju comes into the cell, she describes it as like the scent of spring and paper and like a refreshing wind and like all this stuff. And it's so tied to, we find out later that he has wood chi, and like, I love that reflected in their scents even. Yeah. But like, he comes in and he's like, okay, you have got to stop drinking. Like straight up, you have got to stop drinking, because if you stay drunk, it affects your piloting. It may not have seemed like it up until now, but you were also piloting and you knew every girl who was with you was going to die. Now you know there's a chick with you who will not die if you don't fuck up. If you fuck up, you kill her.
I need to say one line, and we just need to clear the air on this immediately, because I've been holding this since you made me read this. Yeah. A triangle is the strongest shape. They are a triangle is the strongest shape. They did a throuple in this, and it works so well.
You know what this jail cell is right now?
Me, my boyfriend, and my boyfriend's boyfriend.
You know what this jail cell is right now?
What is it?
It's a certain inevitable geometry. So is a triangle. Sometimes I wonder if Yisha's attraction extends beyond girls, by the way.
I love that she just says it. And then straight up, same paragraph, basically. Oh, me too, by the way.
And then Yisha meets Li Shimin. He's blushing and scratching his head. God help me.
It's so funny because you get to see from the outside the "oh no, he's hot" moment.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because Shimin shows up and Yiju is just like, oh, it was no trouble. Sir?
No, but it's very cute. I love their relationship. Men can be friends with men without being it being hot and sexy. And women can be friends with women. But the point I want to bring to this pod is that all girls should kiss girls and all boys should kiss boys. Yes. And I think this does really good to do their relationship.
If you're a woman in a male-dominated field, just get as many boys kissing as you can.
He lays by his bedside as he's going through withdrawals.
I know. Oh my God. Everything. There's a really great moment because so Yiju lays down the law. He's like, no more alcohol. Like, no. I don't know how this started, but it's stopping right now because you don't want to kill Zetian. And Shimin is like, yeah, okay, I don't want to kill her because Yiju gets in his fucking face and is like, no, this is an intervention. This is a one-man intervention right now. And it's so funny because, he starts going through withdrawals. And again, this is another moment it would have been, nice to have this breathe a little bit more.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
It's unflinching in talking about, even withdrawals from intense alcohol abuse. They're scary, and they're physically painful, and they're physically debilitating.
And they're dangerous. This is real shit, you guys.
It could kill him. And, a whole bunch of stuff comes out because it turns out when Zetian survived being in the Nine-Tailed Fox and then was paired with Shimin, Yiju hit the books, adjust glasses, and did a bunch of research on Shimin. This is when we find out that he was going to high school, which most people only go to middle school. Mm-hmm. He wrote poetry. He had really beautiful calligraphy.
This literally brought tears to my eyes. He had beautiful calligraphy, and Zetian mentions he should bring that back up. And then that's when we find out that he doesn't think he can anymore because the manual labor of laying bricks on the wall when he was in prison ruined his hands. My voice is shaking saying it. It's so sad.
This book also is just hey, by the way, the carceral state fucking sucks. Yeah. Just note that down real quick.
This is another, like you said, a domestic kind of thing that I kind of wish I had a little more time to breathe. But one thing that does sneak in here that I think is really valuable is that, Zetian is constantly thinking about, her place in this new household. And I think we make a joke out of saying this a lot, but, there's a specter haunting every interaction Zetian has at home, and it's the specter of domestic abuse in a huge way.
Yeah.
And so, there's moments where Li Shimin and Yiji have, they're immediately comfortable in a way at home where she can't be because even though nobody's barking orders at her, in a weird way, it's uncomfortable that nobody's barking orders at her. You know what I mean?
They're still behind a locked door too. Like, she's still under control.
Yeah.
There's a specific quote that she talks about.
While you look that up, I want to talk about Zhu. We've kind of glossed over it, but I want to pay it a little bit of homage. In the beginning, she kisses Yiju, right? Like, they have one little tender kiss just so she can get it out of the way. And like, she has this, there's a constant like, in another world, she could have been his wife, right? She could have gone the path. She could have been she didn't want to, but she could be a farm girl who goes, but because of this revenge, she's doing it. When they finally re-meet and he saves her and they get into the room, one of the first things she does is embraces him and kisses him because she does love him and he loves her. And taking it from his version of this is he knows that she signed up to go be a concubine pilot, knows that the guy died, and that before the cameras could be cut, saw her come out of, the nine-tailed fox.
Yeah.
And until that moment was like, there's no way I'll ever see her again. She's going to die.
Yeah.
And so much like Zhu, a man of action, he said, okay, I'm going to get into a scholar class that's going out there and I'm going to come up with these plans and I'm going to help them and I'm going to research these people.
I'm going to use my money.
To Yija, this is what it means to love somebody with all your heart, right? He realized in that moment that she was meant to be a pilot. And if he truly loved her, he would do everything he possibly could to make sure that she could be a pilot. It's so fucking good. I can't
really
get over
good.
it.
But yeah, talking about their home dynamic. Yeah, go.
He says about her, right? So I just love this moment when they finally embrace after all of this and are having this moment. And she's like, I love you. You mean so much to me. And he's like, no, you're the one who means so much to me. Wu Zhiqian, you inspire me. Whenever I lose hope that the world can change, I remember you. I remember how you fight for what you want, no matter what anyone says, no matter what stands in your way. He draws me into his arms and murmurs into my hair, you're my polar star. I'll go wherever you guide me. Banger!
I had to sit down.
Yup.
Get you a scholar. Holy shit,
Get you a man who can do both, you and your other husband.
This is really cool because, again, we talked about it's like this is talking a lot about gendered violence. It's also talking a lot about gender. And, like, especially we get a lot of it through Zetian because she's dealing a lot with gender presentation and how people expect her to look and behave and act and stuff.
Yeah.
But we're also seeing very different types of masculinity just in the men around her. Because like her home life was full of very brutal, forceful men. She's been exposed to a lot of very brutal, forceful men, who enact, gendered violence against her. But like she's run into Shimin, who doesn't neatly fit into her boxes because he's physically imposing and he's all this, but he has dimension to him and he has principles and he won't stand for the idea that men do violence because they don't know any better. Like he's presenting this kind of masculinity, and then specifically Yiju is presenting a scholar masculinity type that was really common in like historical Chinese like stories and novels, and I think is pretty common in like modern Chinese like historical romance shows and like maybe manhwa and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, this is big in manhwa.
But like you don't really see it in the West. Where there's a masculinity that's based on being precise, being scholarly, having medical skills, like being supportive. And there's a really great moment when Zetian is watching Yiju with Shimin, and he's like dabbing the sweat from his brow and like helping administer medicine. And she's like, I could not nurse him the way he needs to be nursed to survive this. I'm so fucking glad Yiju is here because I could not be this for him. And I was like, oh, different types of masculinity and femininity. Like, as a butch woman, I'm like,
To branch off here and talk about, like, another thing that just this show isn't our show right now is doing. One of the things that kind of Western culture does in response to this kind of masculinity, or not necessarily in response to, but one of the kind of knock-on effects of the ways in which Western media tends to paint Asian people, is it infantilizes and it feminizes Asian men. And what this becomes is like this strange synthesis. And, if we jump forward from, the ancient times or whatever to the present, we get this extremely weird triple-mediated figure in Otacon, who is... and for all intents and purposes, the Yija of Metal Gear.
You heard it here first.
It's so real.
And I think that it's a very purposeful Western approach to media that paints him as like a squabbling, like crying mess all the time. And I think it's really interesting because his relationship with Solid Snake and Yija's relationship with Li Shimin are both like extremely important to me as performances of gender, because I mean, for me, for one thing, the Otacon thing was extremely formative for me. Like Otacon as like a queer figure in media history is like, and we'll get into this more later obviously, but the fact that Li Shimin is in his like fevered withdrawal state, mistaking Yija for his like one of the pilots that he actually really cared for in the past.
Yeah.
One of the concubines, mistaking him for like basically his ex-girlfriend in so many words, and nuzzling his hand and calling him Wende, is like, it's
doing some shit to your brain.
It's doing some shit to my brain. It's also doing some shit to fucking literature. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
We have to talk about how, like, men are, like Alice said earlier, men are allowed to be intimate with each other. Men are allowed to be friends with each other and not have it be sexual. But hey, this is not that. They are lovers. Like, I can't.
But no, another part of their dynamic, all of that is so true and so valid. And I love seeing it. I love these depictions of different types of men. And like I said, also with Shimin, the racial inflection, like there's so much here because there is a lot of this type of masculinity is very much available to Yiju because he's the son of a media mogul.
Yes.
Like he has the money for the four-step skin routine.
Not just any kind of media mogul. Chinese triad style.
Oh.
He's in dark shit.
He's in dark shit, yeah.
Yeah, we'll get more of that in the second half. But I wanted to touch on this moment of their domesticity because you were talking about like Zetian is trying to figure out like where to fit herself in this dynamic.
Yeah.
There's a moment where Shimin has picked up on the fact that Yiju and Zetian have something going on, right? He's picked up on that, but it hasn't been brought up with him yet. He's just kind of on the outside, and he's kind of sullen, not in like a jealous way, but in a sense of like, I think his line is specifically like, I didn't know you could look so happy. Like he's only ever seen a version of her that just hates him. And he's seeing glimpses of this woman who's very happy with Yiju. And he's struggling with that, but he's not articulating it. He's kind of just stomping around the apartment. He's not literally stomping, but he's kind of just like glowering. And I want to read this passage because it talks about her home life and how she's having to adapt here. And I think it's ultimately to her benefit, but she says, countless times I watched my father turn my mother into a nervous wreck by simply transforming himself into a dark cloud of a presence.
Yeah.
He wouldn't use any curses or shouts, but he'd set his bowl down a little too loudly or slam doors a little too harshly. She'd step cautiously around him as if he were a bomb, worrying about her every move for fear of setting him off. Without uttering a single word, he'd teach her to twist herself into knots, to prioritize his needs and wants in some strangling hope of quelling the pressure in the house and returning things to normal. I was never willing to learn my father's lessons. My default solution was always to push him until he exploded. A few moments of pain were better than days and nights of fear. I love that because she's like looking at the dynamic that her mother and father had.
So
and it's
good.
like, I'm not willing to repeat that. We're just going to lance the wound. What the fuck is going on? Like, it's so good. Anyway, Hyundan's attack or whatever.
Yeah, so one of the things
Some
we
other
learn,
shit's going on.
one of the things we learn is that the Hwandans are kind of aware of pilot population and will respond to surges of power into human population. So now that there's like a new potential matched pair, they're attacking more often.
They sensed that peak of 1800 chi, right?
Yeah, 18,000. Like, it's a huge threat.
Them.
And it's specifically mentioned by the advisors, I think. So these things have a nest where they replicate, and there is I think it's either king class. I think it's a king class. There's a king class Hwandan who watches over that replication facility, and that would, like, destroying that would be key to retaking Zhou province. But they've never had anyone who could threaten that Hwandan, and now they do, and the Hwandans can sense it. Like, ooh.
So we get into something I love in any historical drama, which is interfighting between branches of the military. So when a chrysalis pilot goes out, after battle, they are given 2 weeks or a fortnight to recharge their chi, right? It's a way they are taken off rotation, off the wall for a bit so that they can recharge. Hunduns attack, and your boy is in the middle of detoxing from heavily drinking for years.
It's been 2 days, and he's in the middle of detoxing.
And one of the local strategists. So our guy is from the capital, right? There's the capital strategist, and these are the frontier strategists. And they're like, they're attacking more because you did some shit. You got to go back out there and fight. And they're like, no? What?
Yeah, Sima Yi is like, there's no fucking way this is happening. It's been 2 days. He does not have the chi. He's in the middle of detoxing.
Yeah. And they know this because what they're actually doing is something called tributing. Because because of the way that the Huandans can sense the pilot population, when a powerful pilot dies, they also back off. And so they are purposefully trying to put them on the battlefield in subpar conditions so that if they die, the Huandans can chill out a little bit.
Because if those two die, they will lose the chance. They might really lose the chance to get the Zhou province back, but they won't have to deal with these constant attacks that have been happening since the Vermillion Bird incident.
Yeah, because the attacks, we're in full Pacific Rim mode. They will be coming every 4 hours until, they're...
Yeah.
But yeah, this is when we find out the secret, which is that, so when Ximin was first recruited, Sima Yi was his strategist. He was handling his training. And then he handed it off to one of the frontier strategists. I didn't note this guy's name down, but he handed it off to the frontier strategists, and Sima Yi has only recently come back into Ximen's life, and is like, why the fuck is he an alcoholic? Why is he unshaven? Why is he, fucked up? And it turns out that to counteract Ximen's guilt about the fact that every time he pilots, a girl dies, they have gotten him addicted to alcohol. And he has been offered grain liquor, basically, every time he fights to incentivize him to fight and then to pacify him after he fights.
Yeah. It's extremely fucked up.
It's very fucked up.
There's a very good scene in which, he wants liquor, right? He's, yearning for liquor, and they're trying to entice him to pilot and go and die with liquor. And she just reams into him. She's like, oh, you were just killing women to get more booze? And he's like, no, I was drinking to deal with my guilty conscience. She's like, that's a fucking excuse. You knew women were going to die and you'd get booze out of it. That's all you did. It's really much like, oh, you want to be an ally? Allying requires sacrificing yourself. You can't be a feminist and do these things, right? Real vibes.
A real feminist would have killed himself.
Yeah.
But
she basically says that.
And that's kind of her extreme position, right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, the boyfriend is like, no. Yiju is like, hey, he's going through withdrawals. Now is not the time to ream him for his choices, okay? He's making an effort.
what Zichen is trying to get out of him is this, admission of guilt. Admit that you are not a good man. Admit that you are bad. All the other men I know are bad. Admit that you are bad. And for me, it's I read that as, she wants to convince herself because she's really struggling. A guy that she really cares about is back in her life. Yiju is back. And then Ximen has been as decent as he can towards her this entire time. And to a certain extent, her world is built on vengeance. Her world is built on the idea that she's hated. And it's very hard to adjust to new information when you've invested so much of your identity in even just in being hated by other people.
Yeah. Especially when you didn't even expect to live this long,
Yeah, definitely Ximen is not a paragon of virtue or anything, or a virtuous soldier, but he is a victim of systems as well.
Yeah.
And she's not quite at the point where she is willing to take that into consideration while she's also thinking about the women who died piloting with him. And this scene is really interesting because Yiju is having to intervene. Like Alice was saying, he's having to intervene in a major way and basically mediate this so that they can basically at this point they're trying to hide. Because if they can't find him, they can't make him pilot. It's so funny.
They're doing some Scooby-Doo shit.
They do the full hallway chase sequence, but they're having to cart fucking Ximen along.
But it's funny because you have these high-level strategists having this bickering and fighting, and the soldiers who are assigned to each of these people are like, well, we can't shoot any of them.
Yeah,
what the fuck are we supposed to do?
There's an extremely funny, the all-timer quote from that scene. There it is. Found it. Okay. So yeah, all the soldiers are pointing. So like the territorial strategists have their soldiers pointing at it, trying to get Shimen, and the capital strategists have their soldiers there trying to keep them from being tributed, pointing their guns at the territorial guys. And Zetian knocks the bottle of grain alcohol out of the shithole's hand and is like, fuck you, we're not doing it. And Sima Yi is like, scatter. And he grabs Shimen and he's like, rich boy, go get, he keeps calling Yiju rich boy, which I love. He's like, Yiju, go get Zetian. And they run at the guards and Sima Yi goes, you can't shoot me. I'm from Central Command, Sima Yi shouts, ramming through the soldiers' standoff.
I love it.
And then,
you can't shoot me. I'm from Central Command.
You can't shoot me. I'm rich. Yiju slips through the opening created.
It's so
good.
It says so much about the society, which is based on like old Chinese society and even modern Chinese society of just like, no, a regular ass soldier couldn't do anything.
Yeah, so they just ran for it and did their Scooby-Doo shit where they hid. But they can only hide for so long. And they're very aware that, like, with the territorial guys intent on tributing them to turn off all these crazy attacks that are happening, they need some kind of protection. And like other male pilots have connections to each other. They have friends. They're not likely to make any fucking friends. So Zetian has two ideas. She is like, oh, and during this part, they have all these confrontations. They've ended up moving in together. Like there's this weird situation. But Zetian realizes that if she wants Wuxia to survive, like if she wants her country to survive, they need to be able to try to retake Zhou. And she can't kill Shimen because she's been trying to figure out when she could kill Shimen to get out of this whole time. She decides that she can't kill him because she'd be giving that up. And she's starting to get the feeling he might be like a good dude in a bad situation, you know, like she is. But anyway, she is trying to form connections. She's like, I got a network. I got to get some people. And she's like, who do I go to? There are two other female pilots. Mm-hmm. Who are in bonded pairs. They're not as high spirit pressure, but there are two other women here. They could at least be ins for me to start building allies. And one of them is actually from the province. So, like, it would be important to meet her.
Also, they're both here at this time.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Listen, there's only so much Great Wall. Don't worry about it.
Sorry, this is Mecca. Alice, what are you talking about? We have to have a bathroom, washroom scene. It's Mecca.
I was about to say, this is a Mecca, so we gotta have the bath scene.
Of course they're here. We have to have a bath scene.
This is so top 10 anime bath scenes for me, 100%.
It's really good.
So the person that Zetian is trying to make contact with is somebody that she's kind of idolized. It's Dugu Qianlu, who is the female pilot of the White Tiger. And so...
Meow.
What in the goddamn...
The meow got me.
The White Tiger, meow.
Meow.
Nyan nyan. White Tiger.
She is Zhongdi, like Shimen. And but she's full Zhongdi. And she's from this province. And she's really cool. Like Zetian has like looked up to her because this was someone it was comfortable to look up to because nobody was dying for these two to fight. You know, because they were equally matched. And so she's like, I'm going to create a situation. I can do social engineering too. It's not just for people who throw soup on people. I can do this. I'm going to arrange, I'm going to trade a jade necklace to get the auntie in charge of the bathhouse to call me when Qianlu shows up for her shower in her bath time. And so she conspires that they'll just bump into each other in the bath.
Random.
And it's this moment where you're like, oh yeah, she's going to meet another female pilot. And she's optimistic about like meeting another female pilot. Yep. She's been so isolated, right?
Yep. This goes about how you think it's gonna go.
She tries to make her move to like make this connection. And Qianlu is not fucking having it. Qianlu has decided what type of woman she is. And she's a homewrecker.
I'd like to read a passage. Let me tell you something, Fox girl. Her gaze slashes into mine, crackling a brighter electric green. I know your type, so it's best that you stay away from me, and especially away from my partner. What? Stay away from my partner. Homewrecker!
Homewrecker. That's the reputation that she has.
We learned that Doogu's bonded pair has been looking into Jutien. And of course, I saw another girl on your phone. I was just looking into her because she has a high chi pressure,
I saw another girl in your mind realm.
I know.
I saw another girl in your mind realm. Occupy men's thoughts rent-free, Jutien, forever.
It's so rough. And it's this really demoralizing moment where she literally gets kicked down to the floor of the baths. And the other female pilot walks off and she's just like, I've never been more alone in the world, and the one person who I thought could relate to my circumstances is preoccupied with the man in her life.
Yep.
Stay away from my partner, you man-killing whore.
Well, and this is what this is what we were talking about earlier with like the fight in the little concubine bay thing. Because she says, I was such a fool to have assumed Chilua would stand by me just because she's also female. It was my grandmother who crushed my feet in half. And it's like, this is what this is. Like, this is how society has wrapped, like, the female performance back on itself to reinforce its own
So much gender policing comes from inside the house, is what I was going to say.
Yeah.
And to speak again to, like, some of the racial undertones, like, she's Zhangdi, right? So the ending of this, so she doesn't have bound feet. Zhangdi girls don't get their feet bound, is a big thing.
We don't do that here.
So this ends with, she leaves me in a puddle of cold, clammy water, her unbound feet slapping assuredly over porcelain the way mine never can.
Yep.
I know.
Like, she's not even an equal to this princess general because their lots in life are so different. So even another woman she is distant from.
But she doesn't go without making any friends. She runs into Ma Xiaoying, and she is not a local, so this is not the type of connections that Tian was trying to make. But she is kinder, and she's had 2 children despite being a pilot. Like, concubines had to take her place during the end parts of her pregnancy, but like she has had 2 children by her male pilot. And she is kind of, if there's a ideal pristine image of what a woman in a balanced match is, she's kind of living it. Like, she's a country girl, her feet aren't bound. She was never like that prim and proper, like her family didn't focus on that for her. She was only detected because they were doing random testing and they found that she had this crazy spirit pressure. And so she kind of comes from the same background as Zetian, but she's living the life as prescribed. Like, this is the pinnacle of what you can achieve as a woman. Like, this is the life.
To go with that, like, she has children with her partner. Like, they are raising children.
2 boys,
she is actively,
pointedly.
Yeah. When she wasn't piloting while she was pregnant, those concubines die, which Zetian calls out is like, oh, you having that kid caused many women to die because you wanted to not be piloting, and by doing that, you put concubines in trouble.
Yeah, and Zetian can't fathom why you would give up a bunch of women's lives for 2 sons and this man, you know?
Right. A little back and forth they have is she's like, oh, hey, you have, like, bruises on you from being beaten to shit by people for like literally the entire book up until this point. I've got some cover powder. And she's like, no, I don't have anyone to please. I'm not covering this. And she's like, well, you know, if you need it, you know,
some girls do.
Because
some
women
girls do.
Some girls do. And she's very much like, this is what women in our culture do. She has drank the Kool-Aid, right?
Yeah, but no, this is an interesting connection for her to make because the woman who she befriends here is trying to be as friendly as she can within what she understands of their society. She's like, I have cover-up powder if you need to cover your bruises from domestic violence. Like, I'm here for you. If you need to talk about something, I'm here for you. Like, that's what she can extend to her. Honestly. And it's not what Zetian needs, because Zetian was trying to make, like, strategic allies. But it's an interesting connection to have made here.
She's the hero Zetian deserves, but not the one she needs right now.
One other thing before we go into the final fight. I want to say that one of the ways you learn to be a bonded pair and to train better is by ice skating together.
Yeah,
and I just really like that.
Yes.
I just really liked that. That was just cute.
And it's so funny because they're like, yeah, initially when we were testing and training bonded pairs, we just went with dancing. But we found adding ice actually really helped because it makes you so unstable and you really have to rely on each other. And it's just not working for these two. Like, you already know what's up. They're just not. But the other connection I wanted to call out is Zetian realizes, so she's like, okay, I can't make connections through the other women here. The other option I have is that I could get tabloids working in my favor. If I'm enough of a media sensation, we can survive this because news outlets and media companies will be so invested in making money off of our appearances. If somebody tries to tribute us, they will exert pressure to keep that from happening. And she describes a pilot who is actually retired, which almost never happens. But like he ended his service at 25 and he became a popular entertainer. Like that's the deal he worked. And so Zetienne is like, okay, if I go through Yiju, whose father is this media mogul, maybe we can work this angle and we'll be protected this way. And basically the voicemail that gets left for Yiju, because his dad won't even talk to her, is win another fight and then we can talk. But yeah, so everything now is hinging on their next fight and they just cannot get into sync. Like there's this unbridgeable distance between them. And Sima Yi, their strategist, assumes that it has to be sexual. Like, he finds out that she hasn't slept. At first, he's suspicious because he's like, listen, you cannot be seen to be cheating with Yiju.
He literally stomps up to her and says, and I quote, "You'd better not be tangled up in a love triangle."
Me, anytime I'm reading a book with 3 characters. You better not be fucking doing that shit. And she's like giving him shit. This is when we get the line, a triangle is the strongest shape. But she's like giving him shit because she doesn't think he's serious. But he is deadly serious. He's like, listen, if you have a relationship with Yiju and it's endangering your partnership with Ximen, like, that is not going to work. People are going to die. Like, you are going to get killed, and then the Hunduns are going to come kill us all. Like, you cannot also be doing this.
The
and then
easiest way to get close. Fuck him.
Yeah, fuck him. And he finds out that not only is she not fucked Yiju, she's not fucked Ximen. She hasn't fucked anybody. She didn't fuck Young
She's
Wang.
still mated.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
You cannot fuck me. You cannot fuck me. I am unfuckable. I have never been fucked.
And he's just like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Go take care of this right now. I'll write you a hall pass. Like, go fuck.
Literally,
and she's just
you can
so
leave
frustrated.
class. Go, just get it done. I don't care
Report to the fuck hut immediately.
And she's just like horrified, and she expresses that by basically being like, I'm not gonna sleep with a guy I fucking hate, which of course Ximen overhears. Classic moment. And then of course the alarms go off.
Oh,
this is
awkward.
And there's another Hundun attack. They've only had 6 days of rest at this point, but the territorial guys are in charge now. And they're like, nope, you're going out.
They have to.
They catch him. They can't hide in time. They planned.
Everything hinges on this fight. A potential media deal, whether they live or die, potentially retaking the Zhou province. Like, all of this stuff is happening. But it's basically a doomed battle because they're so chi-starved. Yeah.
Because the stakes weren't high enough, right?
Yeah.
So as they're being shoved around and forced to go pilot, one of the guards just shoots her.
Yeah, well, she basically she realizes
gets fucking shot.
They've been letting her wear spirit metal. Her and Ximen wear spirit metal when they do their training, and their spirit metal is wings because they're the Vermillion Bird. And she realizes, I can't walk or run out of here, but maybe I could fly. And the moment it looks like she's about to open her wings, they fucking shoot her.
Yep.
There is a scene where they do fly off of the wall together.
It's
and
very
it's very
good. It's kind of a minor scene, but it's kind of a trust fall situation.
When we talk about breathing, like, fuck the publisher for putting a limit on what could have been so great. Like, I wanted that whole thing to be a long, elongated sequence because it was like, oh, this is it. This is what I'm here for. Them growing together.
Yeah.
Anyway, so she gets shot.
So she gets shot, and along with them in the cockpit are soldiers that have guns pressed to their heads.
They literally put jump seats in the cockpit.
So that soldiers can hold them at gunpoint.
And they say very clearly, to the back of the head. And all I'm thinking was like, oh, that thing's get tossed around. That's dangerous, guys.
Yeah, right? That's what I thought too.
You know what? I don't know that they're worried about safety. I don't know that OSHA is present in these cockpits.
Shake hands with danger.
Well, they do also want them to die. I want to know what they told the soldiers. Like, hey, you're going to go out here.
It's going to be totally cool, dude. We'll come get you.
Just make sure they don't run off.
Yeah, just make sure nobody comes and tries to, like, get the stereo out of this thing. Like, just keep an eye on it. We'll come get you. No, these dudes are gonna fucking die.
I do love the running theme of them blowing out the speakers
They
in
keep
every
blowing out
fucking
the
mech.
speakers that the generals are using to talk to them.
They end up blowing out the speakers, and then she also just metal bends the soldiers out of there. It rips so hard.
Get the fuck out.
She literally rips open her own neck in the middle of combat and like, oh, darn, they fell out.
Oops.
This is a king class. This is an Ava-sized mech. Like, they fell to their deaths. It's so good. I'm obsessed with it.
Yeah, they are straight up splatted. They have been turned into paste.
Yeah.
But they're forced into this doomed battle. They're piloting together all right. They're still not perfectly in sync, but like they are working together a little better. Zetian is a little more willing to let Ximen handle things that he has more experience with, and she's taking more charge of doing things like trying to transform the mech because she has more precise control with the metal. Like they're trying to distribute responsibilities a little bit better, but they are so chi depleted.
Yeah,
like
that's the
there's just
problem.
no good way to do this. And so there's a couple of different ideas they try. One of them is Zetian is like, there's the guy who tried to fucking assassinate me in my cell, the pilot of the Headless Warrior.
What if you were the legless warrior, you piece of shit?
Get fucked, dude. Runs over, rips his legs off, and just sucks the chi out of him. Just like...
She doesn't get much, but it's a wonderful scene.
He's not killed, but he'll never be a pilot again, right? Like, oh... It's like, it feels emotionally like the counter to him stomping on her feet.
Yeah.
Like she literally rips his legs off.
Yep.
Like it's so good. But even still, they're still chi depleted. And so all she can think to do is basically 9/11 the Great Wall.
Yep.
Listen, if you're going to kill us, I'm taking as many of you motherfuckers with me as I can. And Ximen is like, I'm resigned to this. Like, fine, let's fucking commit suicide by cop.
Well, she attacks him. She briefly attacks him in the yin yang realm again.
Yes.
It's like, hey, listen, this is over. Let's make it mean something. And so they decide to do this. Yeah.
And they're flying back, and as they're flying back, Yiju gets on the speakers, and it's like, hey, babe.
Hey.
You good?
He runs out in the rain.
He just
confronts the mech on foot.
He's on the gantry.
And he's given a cover story. He's like, oh, you came back here for chi, right? I'll give you chi. Like, he's trying to commit, because they've already talked about, if they turn on the Great Wall, there are guns mounted on the Great Wall. There are people who are looking. They will get shot down. But she was just going to try to rush this anyway. And so I read this as Yiju is trying anything to be like, don't shoot.
I agree.
They're just coming back for chi. And he runs out there in the pouring rain, and he holds his hand out like a kaiju movie.
Touches the bird.
He touches the beak, and using Zetien's like really precise control of metal, they manifest acupuncture needles and they channel his chi into the Vermillion Bird.
Hey, Alice.
Hey.
What's the strongest shape?
Told you the triangle is the strongest shape.
Yeah, shut the fuck up, Sima-Yi. The fucking triangle is the strongest shape.
Triangle is the strongest shape.
It's very good. And he goes out there, and not only does he initially touch his hand to it to transfer the chi, which then infuses their realm, and like they're in the yin-yang realm, and things get really trippy in there, and they like ascend to a higher plane with his help and everything. He leans his forehead against the mech. It's everything. It's fucking everything. And then they go and they beat absolute ass.
And they get a gay longbow. And they beat ass. Everything is fucked. My life will never be the same.
Like, it's a huge dope win, and then the chapter closes with
And then Nico made me fucking stop reading.
Yeah. Violence.
Unfortunately. So, wait. I'm so sorry. One important thing that happens in this, Ichu gets in the cockpit.
Yeah, he's got to join in because the triangle is the strongest shape.
And he's like, you two focus on fighting. I'm going to see what I can do about this gunshot wound. Hey, did we forget there was a gunshot wound in
By the way,
Plague?
she's had a gunshot wound in her the whole time.
She's got a GSW.
Slowly bleeding out.
And he's like, I'm going to do medic. I'm going to heal slut for you two now.
Oh my God. Stop. Shut the fuck up.
I'm so fucking unwell.
And he does. But it ends with her blacking
Discord
out.
kitten eat you.
But Zetian is the Discord daddy. Because it could not be Ximen.
No. You're so right. This is gender.
What is gender?
All right. With that bold statement, this is gender. We're going to go to the break. And after that, I will have a fun and educational game. Be right back.
Hey guys, Alice here. So, On the Shoulders of Giants is a brand new podcast. We're still getting ourselves started. So, if you like what you're hearing and kind of want to hear more of it, maybe leave a 5-star review on your podcasting app of choice, especially if you're on Apple, because that would really help us out. And if you know anybody who might like Mechs, point them in our direction. We'd love to hear from them, and, you know, maybe they'll like what we're giving out there. Again, if you like us, leave us a note. send us a message, leave us a review. Just, interact with us. We'd love to hear from you. And with that, let's go back to the episode.
I don't come here to fucking learn.
Welcome back from the break. You're gonna fucking learn.
I don't come here to fucking learn.
You're gonna fucking learn. This game
made me
is
read
called...
a book first, now this. Jesus
yeah, I made
Christ.
you read a book, and now you're gonna learn. Like, fucking die mad about it.
You made me read a book and then stop at the worst cliffhanger that made me want to die. So...
I'm so sorry. Except I'm not.
Call an ambulance, but not for me.
This game is called Whooshing Easy Mode. So, as gamers, we're very familiar with the idea of type advantages or the weapon triangle. Perhaps first introduced to us by the game of rock, paper, scissors. Several things are presented as having specific relationships to each other, i.e. rock beats scissors, paper beats rock, etc. Hilariously, this is a fact I found out while researching this, the origin of rock, paper, scissors is in China. It came to America via Japan, which is also the origin of perhaps the OG weapon triangle.
That's wild.
The 5 elements of whooshing, water, fire, earth, wood, and metal. So those are the elements, and each have long established relationships to each other that we see come into play with the chrysalises in Iron Widow. The object of this game is for us to get familiar with the simplest ways the elements interact. I'll give you 2 elements, then ask if the first element feeds or overcomes the second element. If you get that right, for a bonus point, you can guess in a general way the reasoning behind it.
Ooh.
If you get the initial question wrong, your opponent will get the point and can then try for the bonus point. So, does that make sense? There will be a practice round.
Yep, I'm in.
I'm in. Ready.
Okay. I hope your chi is fully recharged. Let's get into it.
Me and Brian were ice skating before this, so we could try and become a bonded pair.
I'm the concubine.
Okay. For our practice round, first up is Alice.
Hi.
So, water and fire. Does water feed or overcome fire?
A little movie called Promare taught me that water overcomes fire.
That's powerful. It's the powerful firefighting spirit. Yes, so water overcomes fire. For the bonus point, why? What do you think the logic is behind that?
Water is calming and fire is angry, so it calms down angry people.
That's an approach to it. I'll give you the obvious. It is the obvious on this one by dampening or extinguishing it. So I will give you the point on that one.
Oh, I didn't know if this was like an existential meaning behind these.
The logic here is actually really practical. So be thinking about literally the real world. So
well, and that's like part of the whole thing too, is like because of it, the philosophy is shaped around the way these things interact with each other in the real world. So it's going to be very.
Yeah. I was thinking there was like a poem involved or something.
You were like getting metaphysical. Nope, you're good. Just dampening it.
To be clear, there is probably also a poem involved, but
100%. The cool thing about whooshing is like it permeates so many different things. I legitimately think the only reason we have Pokemon types is because whooshing exists.
Oh, I mean, come on. Yeah. Come on. Let's go.
Okay, so on to the real round. But the first question is a little bit of a softball. I wanted y'all to be fairly even. Brian, wood and fire. Does wood feed or overcome fire?
Wood feeds fire because you feed fire with wood.
Yep. Okay. There's your 2 points.
That's so true, bestie.
Like I said, that was going to be an easy one. So true, bestie. Alice.
Hi.
Water and wood. Does water feed or overcome wood?
Wood and earth are different, right?
Yes, they are.
Water overcomes wood.
Incorrect.
Oh,
shit.
It
feeds wood. Brian, why do you think that is? What do you think the logic is there?
Because plants need water to grow.
Ding, ding, ding. Correct. All right. Like I said, really...
Is earth different from wood? What?
You'll see.
It
gets weirder.
Okay.
It gets weird. All right, Brian.
Yes.
Fire and metal. Does fire feed or overcome metal?
Fire overcomes metal.
Okay, yeah, that's correct. And what do you think the justification is behind that?
Because you need fire to like make a sword and temper and shape metal.
Yep, that is correct.
I just want to say jet fuel can't melt steel beams, so jot that down.
Damn, throw the whole whooshing out. Alex just defeated it with facts and logic.
We just hadn't gotten this episode without like more than one 9/11 reference.
No, we did do a 9/11 reference.
I made one earlier.
We need
2.
We need a couple.
There's a quota. There's actually a counter on my laptop screen, and now that it went to 2, the gunmen that were pressing guns to my head can leave. So
I'm so glad. I'm really relieved. All right, Alice. Earth and metal. Does Earth feed or overcome metal?
I want to say that it feeds metal.
That's correct. Why do you think that is?
Because you mine metal from Earth.
That is correct. Earth literally generates metal. That's where we get it from.
I'm so smart.
Yeah. All right, Brian. Earth and water. Does Earth feed or overcome water?
This is the one I have to think about. I think Earth overcomes water.
Correct. Why do you think that is?
Now this is a little shaky. Damn. I don't think I have a logic here. I think I might have just kind of gone by vibes-based projection on that one. I was going to say because when Earth gets wet, but then I was like, no, because that would be the opposite logic, so I don't know.
It's mud.
It's mud,
No,
yeah.
you actually did it correctly when you said dam.
Yeah, it's dams.
Dams.
Because you can stop water with Earth.
Dams and riverbanks. I've given you the point for that because it was incredibly funny. You could have cursed anyway, but you cursed by saying dam.
Damn.
Alice.
Yes.
Wood and earth. Does wood feed or overcome earth?
Overcome.
Correct. Why do you think that is?
Plant grow from ground, come up, tree on top.
Yeah, you're pretty much correct. Like the detailed thinking on it is that plant roots do actually break up the soil. And they're one of the causes of erosion.
Y'all ever had those Chinese elms?
Actually, roots bind the earth together and help stop landslides, okay?
They do both.
Alice is like, I don't want the bonus point, actually.
Oh, sorry, yeah. I'll take it, please.
Brian, metal and water. Does metal feed or overcome water?
That's hard.
That is hard.
I think it feeds water.
That is correct. Why do you think it is?
Rust? Is that anything?
I can't give you the bonus point on that one. Alice, do you have a guess on that?
Pipes.
What?
We lay in pipes, cups, vessels, chalices.
That is correct, yeah. So the thinking behind it is metal feeds water because it collects it, and specifically the example used was like when water vapor condenses on a metal surface, right? Like it pulls water together. Okay, Alice, fire and earth. Does fire feed or overcome earth?
Shut the fuck up. I'd overcome.
Incorrect. Brian,
what the fuck?
Fire feeds earth. Why do you think that is?
Because you put out fire with sand. No.
That's not why fire feeds earth.
Oh, fire feeds earth.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, volcano?
Honestly, that's pretty much correct. It creates ash, which is an important part of earth and especially of soil.
Pompeii?
So actually a volcano it creates a lot of ash. So yeah, I'll take it.
A lot of ash really quickly.
Alice, I've got something incredibly important I need you to do for me. I need you to announce a bonus round.
Bonus round.
That's right, we got a bonus round. Feeding and overcoming are obviously simplifications of the generative and destructive cycles in wuxing. Obviously, I know you were thinking this. Wow, Nico, this is a really gross oversimplification of this. Don't worry. I know it contains more complex relationships between the elements. For this bonus round, I will give you 2 elements and their relationship. You just have to tell me what you think the logic behind it is.
Okay.
Brian, we go to you. Earth depletes wood. How?
Earth depletes wood. Because plant die in dry earth?
Alice, give me a run at it. I've got to decide if that's enough. Do you have an idea of why Earth would deplete wood?
Kilns. Use fire to make clay pots.
I feel like you're getting on the relationship between fire and earth, but so the thinking, I'll give it to Brian as being closest.
Yeah.
Wood rots when it's buried. That's the thinking.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And our last question, our final bonus round. Alice, metal depletes fire. How?
Forging metal. When you forge metal, you use fire to manipulate it, and that depletes the fire. That's why you got to keep stoking the forge. You don't have to give it to me. Give it to Brian. I want your Brian.
Brian, what is your thinking here? Metal depletes fire. How?
Yeah, I was kind of thinking the same as Alice, where it's like when you heat something, you are actively taking heat away from the original source. Technically,
I'm gonna give it to you because that is more correct. Because Alice mentioned forging, and while technically it was depleting the fire, the example specifically, metal conducts heat away from its source.
Right. Okay.
So I'm gonna give that to Brian. I will declare, Alice, you had 6 Valiant points.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, Brian had 12 Valiant points. His name is going to the top of the scoreboard.
I'm dead. Brian, have you thrown my body down in front of the camera drones?
Yeah, I did, actually. I said, this is your nightmare.
All right. For our mail this time, for fucking once, the red phone isn't ringing. Okay? For once, it is not a flash transmission. This is just like a normal email. Everyone's being super normal. No one's going to die. No one's going to make out with anybody, okay? We have...
No, they're all flash transmissions. I'm sorry. I don't make the rules.
Okay, they're still flash transmissions.
And we are still probably going to make out.
They're still going to make out. So, V, or Vi, I don't know how you pronounce that, but I'll go with V, writes in and says, "Hi guys, it looks like the website for Gundam Evo shut down around the end of 2023. Do I win a prize or something? Sucks. Had a bit of fun with it in the beginning, but some stuff was just baffling. Like the chat filter for at least the first few months banned saying unicorn. I observe in a game or in a franchise that has the Gundam unicorn, but whatever. But they didn't filter the N-word from usernames or chat.
I remember.
There was a bit of an issue with the currency grind for more mechs too. F in the chat. Still loved the woo gun tank meme though. Thank you for writing in.
F's in the chat.
F's in the chat.
F's in the chat. And I think you do get a prize for noting.
V, congratulations. You win our grand prize for being the first one to notice that the link on our website to the Gundam Evo website to show the mechs is not working as the website is down. You win 8,000 Jivo credits. That's right. 8,000 coins you can use in Gundam Evolution to unlock any of the great 26 mechs now available to play in Gundam.
Hey, we're getting a flash transmission. Shit is done.
They'll be in your mailbox. Thank you so much for writing in. We really appreciate your vigilance and finding this great Easter egg, which is that website did not even last 4 months after Jivo dying.
Love you, V.
That we're going to have to go find a way back link.
One thing I don't think we've said on air, because we record the podcast like almost a full month in advance. So V, if you felt like we ignored you because this is coming out in like 2 months, you were not, and I'm sorry.
We didn't. We just never planned on actually having nice human people write to us.
So it's a flash transmission, but you're sending it from a T9 phone, and we are currently around Jupiter.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you're in Pluto, unfortunately. We're just getting it.
But another thing that happened with Gundam Evolution is that they fucking released the camphor like 2 weeks before they shut down.
They really did.
So it was like, Bandai was like, those fucking queers online on the podcast were talking shit about us because of the camphor. You want a fucking camphor? Here's the fucking camphor. Goodbye.
Enjoy it while you can, idiot.
Its kit was so good, and then it died.
Well, I have one more piece of mail. This is from Heather Flowers, the creator of Extreme Meat Punks Forever. They gave our episode a listen and had this to say. Just finished listening to the episode. Excellent work. For the record, I completely agree with y'all's criticisms of the ending. It was my first time putting a cap on such a large story, and I definitely think it tried to do too much at once with too little lead up. I'm glad you enjoyed the game, though, and I hope to hear your thoughts on Season 2 at some point. There's even different types of mech.
Shut the fuck up. We gotta cover this. Boys, we got more meat mechs.
We are going to be returning to the meat mechs. Probably not for the Halloween episode. I know that was a little confusing for you. I was just thinking about meat and blood, and I wanted an excuse to cover the game. But yeah, we'll definitely be covering Season 2, and thank you so much for complimenting our podcast. It means a lot.
Not that we'd compliment your game or anything, but Baka.
Follow Heather Flowers on co-host. They post a bunch of really interesting stuff about game dev and the process, and They have a cool game called Snake Farm that looks absolutely bonkers and hilarious, so people should check that out too.
Yes, absolutely.
Shoutouts.
Especially right now, the industry's tightening up a little bit. Support your local game devs.
Support the Heather Flowerses of the world.
Yes. All right. And that's this episode of On the Shoulders of Giants, where we discussed part 1 of Iron Widow. Any parting thoughts?
The Matt Damon movie, The Great Wall, contains a scene in which Matt Damon and the other white European character who've come from Europe all the way over to China to see what is going on in the Great Wall walk into a giant dining hall, and every single Chinese person in that room stands up and claps for the 2 white people walking in. And I just think that's a very important scene that we all need to remember really happened in a movie that made over $1 billion. What about you, Brian?
Nature is healing with this book. Then, in response to that,
we can save YA. It is possible. Thanks for listening. Pilots, remember you can reach out for advice from the team at our email, questions@osgpod.com, or just update us on broken websites. We appreciate it.
And win a great prize.
And win a great prize that you can use on the camphor. And non-pilots can send general questions or feedback to the same address. You can also catch up with us on social media. The links are in the description for updates and more. Make sure to check back in 2 weeks when we'll be discussing Metal Gear Solid 2, Sons of Liberty. Until then, goodbye. I love you.
Goodbye. I love you.
Goodbye. I love you, but love won't save me. I choose vengeance.